Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 157. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my handsome son, Chris Raygun, only wearing half of his Delson Row outfit this week. Chris, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't have to deal with a crazy heat wave like it seems like the rest of the human population does. So
right,
it's pretty good.
Yeah,
not too bad. Can't complain.
Good. It's not so bad in Southern California compared. I mean, the rest of the world is, to be fair, like the Pacific Northwest, not really prepared for this kind of weather. With not a lot of ACs and central air. Even when I lived in San Francisco, really nice places, no AC, which is kind of crazy. So stay cool out there. Also joined, as always, by executive producer of Last Stand Media, Dustin Furman, wearing his Metal Gear shirt.
That's right.
How are you?
I'm doing well. We're talking about the heat. I hate to be like, the weather outside, but I'm feeling great because you guys remember you got a little bit of the glossy Dustin at the end of Sacred Symbols because my old air conditioner in this room just simply was too loud. But now, I got a new one that's very cool. I'm rocking a very nice 73 degrees.
Nice. Look at you.
I no longer have to suffer and be a moist boy.
Ooh.
Though,
what was the other number on there? Did it say 40 something?
That's the humidity. I've got 44% humidity.
Okay, I was afraid that it was some nonsense having to do with the metric system or Celsius or something.
We can't have that.
Throw that in the garbage. I
no.
can't. You ever think about how, and this is just obviously, it's the case with everything. It's the case with money and all, how you just don't understand how anything works outside of the metric that you understand. It's like learning another language. Like you have to think in a whole nother way. Yeah. I understand what $5 is. But then you're like 500 yen. And then I'm like, well, that's roughly $5, but they have a weak economy. And
right.
So it's always interesting with degrees because sometimes I'll watch European news and they'll have the weather and it's it's 17 degrees in London. I'm like, what? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand what that means. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to get the imperial system if they could. By the way, I just finished working out. And I am so hot right now. That's why I'm doing this, because otherwise you have to understand. I've been wiping my face with towels on the shows because I roll right into the show after working out. I feel best after I work out, and I feel like my energy is highest.
Yeah,
But I was running late today because I'm dealing with issues around the house. And I'm just coming too close now. So I just needed to give my body a little time to breathe, and maybe give everyone a little bit of a show, depending on if you like, middle-aged fat white men.
I said I was, wasn't moist because of the heat. I might be moist for other reasons, though. I mean, depending on the angle.
All right. Well, I think I'm all right to put my shirt back on. Hold on a second. You know what else too is my headphones get so we were talking. I think I was talking about this on another show. Your ears just exude heat. Have you ever noticed that? If you've ever come in and put headphones on or whatever?
Well,
it's so hot. It's literally piping out of my ears right now. So hold on just a moment.
Some major ear sweat concerns.
Yeah, I walked around in Los Angeles all the time with big headphones because they were the best way. And Colin, you might remember this. Every time I would come over, I would have these big ass headphones on. Because
you'd forget
it's just the best way. It's just the best way not to have to talk to Uber drivers,
Oh, definitely.
So I would wear them all the time, but then I'd get home and I'd be it'd be sweaty, It's hot.
It's hot, dude. And that was wearing headphones or earbuds in the Uber or being on a fake phone call in Uber was the Uber Select before there was Uber Select. That's how you had to do it before they gave you the option. And I was outraged to be in an Uber Select once in LA where they had the audacity to speak anyway. And it's not that I worry about that in a normal Uber ride, but they explicitly ask you pay the surcharge, and it's quiet preferred or whatever is the term they use. And then this guy's going off and I'm like, come on, man.
Bro.
Could have taken any Uber around here. I mean, I asked you because I thought we were on the same page. All right.
That's always so sad.
What is this show about? Oh, PlayStation. Welcome to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Fresh off of another all-time high on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Thank you so much for that. We're now rolling 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols plus our Patreon exclusive episode of this show every week now. So technically, probably not by runtime, but there's more now going to be on Patreon than off Patreon. we'll make some of those free clips of those free. Obviously, all spoiler cast review discussions will be free. Recent episodes include a Resident Evil 8 review discussion, which was really fun to get into. Next week, we're having Rick Hogue on to do Returnal, which is going to be fun. And I'm also going to do another call-in show at some point coming up. So that will be fun as well. And we'll figure everything out as we go. It's going to be a lot of different permutations, a lot of different opportunities. I'm excited to get Chris involved more doing solo stuff as well. And yeah, so support us on Patreon if you can. Thank you so much for that. Merch, laststandmedia.shop. Want to give a shout out to the game, my most recent game, Hybraxia 2. We released a free update. I don't know if you guys saw. Very exciting. It's available on PS4 and Vita right now. It'll be coming to everything else, PC, Xbox One, and Switch soon. Huge story update, new trophies, new modes, new game plus, etc. All free just for owning the game. Thank you so much. We're also bringing the game natively to PS5 and Xbox Series X and S soon, and we will have more to say about that. And hey, real quick, RIP to River. I don't know if you guys saw this. Fallout 4's dog meat. Chris, did you see this unfortunate news?
I did. It's always sad when a dog dies.
Yeah.
Irrespective of could have been the shittiest dog in the world too, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
It still would be sad because it's just like, it doesn't know.
Right. You're right. That's actually a good point. It's rare. I'll say it's rare for a dog to die and that it be a celebratory moment.
Yeah.
I don't maybe like in the game, if you're fighting some other dog or some dog, wild animal in a JRPG, a random encounter, you might not want to fuck with them. But Dustin, how are you feeling about the death of River?
Man, it sucks because it makes you think about your own pets that you love. What's I think it was Jim Gaffigan. It's some comedian that's like getting a dog is just a future investment in one of the worst days of your life.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I try not to. Obviously, you don't want to dwell in the. I mean, technical. I guess it's not a fantasy. Everyone's going to die someday, but you try not to dwell on it. But every once in a while, I think about my baby girl's not always going to be with me, and that's hurtful.
It's really sad. Also, I think about that with my own pets, but just this. I was listening to a podcast about it recently. Kind of like this trick that humans play on themselves, in which, we kind of trick ourselves about death because any real ponderance of it will crush you. Like the idea of finality and oblivion and all of that. And so we have like evolutionary tricks where we just don't think about it, even though we think very carefully about many other things. It's hysterical. Yeah.
You have to not. I mean, I feel like every once in a while, I mean, here we're getting deep here. I'll go through like a week phase where I'll think about people dying a lot because I'm like, man, I've done pretty well so far. No one close to me really has died yet. I think, great grandparents, whatever. But I'm like, just a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, it's like you're overdue for something.
Right.
Something,
right. That's exactly.
It's been fine for too long. Something crazy's got to go wrong.
Indeed.
At some point very soon. That is pretty fucking sad. That's like a thing that just kind of comes up sometimes.
It's true. Like, this is getting so philosophical.
I know.
But your life is almost like, and you're one of these stops, by the way, a series of sad stops in which people get on or happy stops, people get on and off. People are born, people die, and the stops are inevitably coming. Like, you just don't even know when the stops are coming, and it's kind of fucked up. And it goes both ways. It's very interesting. And so I think it was someone recently, like Lex Friedman or something, was talking about that, about how we literally can't ponder death as humans. If we do, it would just,
right,
blow you up. The idea of not existing is impossible to believe. I mean,
man, so PlayStation, huh?
Dog meat, RIP.
RIP. Well, it was an interesting episode so far. Oh, I want to give a shout out to Defining Duke, because our sister show run by Mr. Matty Plays, we recently said goodbye to Carrick, who is the co-host for the first 25 episodes of the show, and we're welcoming in Lord Cognito. It's Lord Cognito, right? Because we call him Cog, right?
Right,
so
Cognito.
It's Cognito, right? So it's not Lord Incognito, because we just call him Cog.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to have him with us, because I think I said this when I was on his show with the Lords maybe a month ago. Just such an interesting and fun energy, like a passion for games that's really all about the love of the sport, as it were. It's super fun, and it's going to bring a whole new angle to Defining Duke. And Maddie's thrilled. The audience seems amped up. Did you guys see the feedback?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
been pretty good.
Feedback has been fantastic.
Some people thought that we should give Chris to defining Duke for future considerations. But I was 100% against that because we can't lose the secret sauce of the show here.
No.
And you know, and we can make him transient, and he'll go over there sometimes, I'm sure, but
yeah,
he's ours.
We need the sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I can't do two shows a week like that. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot. I got a lot to do, guys. I got a lot of my own shit, you know? I can't be like passed around like a cheap whatever you want to say. Because I want to be careful.
Yeah, you want to be kind of careful there. Glad you pulled back. Well, I mean, say whatever you need to say.
Yeah.
But well, anyway, this all comes back to R.I.P. River, the dog. We're gonna miss you. Very sad to see that. Also, I don't know if you guys saw Haven, Jade Raymond's studio has a logo. I wanted to let you guys know. We were kidding about how they didn't have a logo. They now have a logo.
Wait, guys, can we do a candid for Twitch reacts or whatever? It's like Haven has a logo.
Yeah.
Like, put that on Twitter. There you go.
My God, you must really, because you cut out some of those things sometimes. I assume when you do our thumbnails, right? For like when just us on video, like to put over the thumbnail. And I always think like it's probably pretty hard to fight. You probably have to look for a shot that doesn't of me not looking like I'm going to kill myself at some point.
Well,
right?
I'm always trying to. Right. Well, I'm trying to balance. Like, I don't want like the open mouth of every other thumbnail. It's like that for everything. It's like, new Ghost of Tsushima update. Like that, like on the thumbnail. So it's like, how do ridiculous. I need Colin looking happy, but not too happy. And if he looks mad, then, you know, which is, you know, the resting face. You don't have resting bitch face, but it's just kind of a resting. I have the same thing. People say I look angry all the time.
I think it's a smolder.
Do you experience the annoyance of having to cut somebody out of like a thumbnail, and then the mic is kind of like too... It's like too much in front of them.
Right. Well, that kind of actually happened. If you look closely from last week, which a lot of people were thrilled and disturbed at my Dead Space thumbnail.
Yeah.
I was unsure about
You're really
that.
like up in the ante on those. I'll tell you what. It's quite the arms race.
I wasn't sure. I sent it to Lockmore and I'm like, is this too gross or weird? And Lockmore's like, no, do it. And so you can see, if you look closely at Colin's face, you can see the cutout of like the mic in the corner. But I was like, it's fine. It is what it needs to be.
Did you just like fill in the rest of his face with like a fake face? What'd you do?
Yeah, I think you can just see that it's just like slightly cut in the corner, like, you know, which, you know, he looks like a weird zombie guy. So
Isaac could have taken a shot at me with his, his nail gun or whatever the fuck it is he was fighting with.
There's all kinds of tricks, and I mean, here's the thing: I'm watching you two, and if I see, like, Chris, you posted that picture of you in the suit the other day.
Oh,
you know your boy saved that. I'm saving that. It just sounds creepy, but I'm saving that. I'm like, I may need a picture of Chris like that.
Spank Bank?
Spank Bank, of course.
Yeah,
of course, first of all.
Obviously.
That's a different file. But sometimes they go in both. And, you know, you never know when I'm going to need a picture like that for a thumbnail.
Sure.
Yeah, smart.
Good. All right. What the hell are we talking about now? Oh, okay. So there are a series of topics. So this is a pretty big episode because a lot of big news has happened. But also, there are a bunch of things we need to talk about beforehand. And of course, the games we're playing will end, as we always do, with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon, and plenty of your Patreon inquiries sprinkled throughout, starting with Stephen Mortensen, who wrote into us and said, "What's up, CDC?" So Ian Gardner, a dev on the indie side, dev on the indie game Neon Doctrine, just became relevant today. His criticism of clearly Sony's treatment of indie games went from Twitter tirade to news headline in a matter of hours. I'm sure you've seen it, so I won't rehash it here, but I got to see what you think. Do platform holders owe devs and pubs an equitable marketplace? I think there is a big conversation to be had here, and would love to know what the roundtable thinks. So I assume you guys have seen this, and to catch the audience up in a brief way, this guy, Ian Gardner, worked on this game, Neon Doctrine, I guess has been in the industry a while. I don't know him personally. He's not a name I've encountered, but he has experience with PlayStation and other, I guess, hardware manufacturers and storefronts, and very tacitly hid his contempt for Sony in a Twitter thread that kind of laid to bear a lot of what indie developers have been saying behind the scenes about PlayStation for some years. And in fact, it was kind of frustrating to watch it all unfold, because I was like, does anyone listen to this show? I mean, the answer is yes, but no one in the industry, I guess, that would write about it, because we've been talking about this for, a long time. And I've told you that I've talked to indie developers that are not happy with Sony and haven't been for a long time and feel like things have really changed. And I guess I have some experience with that too, and we could talk a little bit about that. Although I have to explain later on, I'm a little bit between a rock and a hard place with this, so we'll talk about that too, and I'll lay that all to bear as well. But Chris, had you seen the story, and what did you think about the way it all played out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising to me. Like, I mean, you've already said, like, we've talked about this a number of times. Obviously, not the focal point of the show or anything, but things have come up here and every now and again where, like, yeah, indie developers have expressed a fairly healthy amount of displease with the way that Sony has handled a lot of independent developers and independent games, especially in comparison to their attitude early on, and earlier on in earlier console generations, where it seemed a little bit more healthy and a little bit more proactive and a little bit more like indie focused. I thought it was funny though that he even bothered to hide that it was about PlayStation in the first place, because it was just so clearly, and he like didn't even, because somebody I think tweeted underneath it, there's like, I would be shocked if this wasn't about Nintendo.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
He was like, and he said like, be shocked. Yeah. And it's like, all right, well, just
I thought that was funny. I know the exact response you're talking about, by the way, and I thought that was funny too, because I'm like, what? How can you read this and not think it was about Sony? But yeah, so what did you make of what he was saying? I mean, it is kind of a redundancy about what we've been talking about on the show, but it really did start a huge conversation that's still ongoing today.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't develop games, so like I don't know firsthand like what development is like on PlayStation, but like I know, based on your experience and based on what we've talked about, that this isn't inaccurate as far as a portrayal of how that scene works. The conversation that's being started though about like, does Sony or do platform holders owe an equitable market or an equitable marketplace to developers and publishers, I think is kind of an interesting one, because when you first see it, because I saw a lot of tweets that were like, ooh, shocker, advertising costs money. And it's like, I understand that layman kind of view of it, but at the same time, it's like, this is very specifically a Sony problem, it seems like, because no one's really, I mean, I'm sure this problem exists in some facet on Xbox and Nintendo, but not a lot of indie developers are talking about it on those storefronts in comparison to Sony. I think probably because maybe Nintendo has some boon there that PlayStation doesn't have, and maybe because Xbox has Game Pass in their kind of back pocket, that kind of helps boost a lot of otherwise under the radar games. I mean, I can think of like several games off the top of my head that I played on Game Pass purely because it was on Game Pass and that I probably wouldn't have touched otherwise. So there is like some visibility on those other platforms that might not be available on Sony's platform. So there is something to talk about here that is beyond just like, ooh, advertising costs money. Wow, complain more. It's like, no, Sony's handling their storefront uniquely poorly.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you're saying here. I wonder, Dustin, what you made of this. By the way, it's worth noting, and I'm not going to get all into it. I'll talk for myself, but if you want to track it, you can go on some of the various websites out there, and a bunch of different devs have basically gone on the record and a bunch more anonymously talking to these websites, kind of reiterating everything that's been said. So that is worth noting. It's not some dude. I can tell you right now, it's not just a guy with an axe to grind. So,
right.
Yeah.
For me, I guess, yeah, the fault is definitely, of course, like Sony. What Chris was saying about how there's like all you need to do, this is a quote from the original thread, all you need to do is spend a very reasonable minimum of $25,000 USD to get featured. And then 30% of your subsequent earnings. So that's where people are getting hung up on. It's like, oh, well, it's an exchange of good. Those things cost money. Advertising costs money. And it's like, well, what about just having a storefront that enables visibility for new games that currently just does not exist on PlayStation? Sure. I have no problem with Sony selling ad space for featured games. That makes sense. I think Xbox does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is when developers feel like that's the only way to get any eyes on their game is through spending money through Sony. And to be fair, when we're talking about storefronts, I mean, the Nintendo storefront is also notoriously horrible when it comes to highlighting anything or even just navigating around. Like sometimes I want to just browse around, and if a game came out a few years ago and it's not on sale, there's no way you're going to see it, like, unless you search for it or something. So the other thing that's also worth mentioning, and I guess this is probably good to kind of throw this over to you, Colin, is I don't know. I'll be light because I don't know what you're allowed to say and what not allowed to say. But like, Lily Mo's experience with working with Sony's backend is, it's questionable. Like we've talked about the communication, so we can say that. Like when there was communication back and forth about is the Vita store going to be closed or not, it's like crickets, right? Like
yeah, because they didn't even know. Like the people that are like accounts level people don't even know the answers to questions. I mean,
right. So it's like there's firsthand experience that the communication and the back end is like questionable.
Listen, nerds, we've been cooped up long enough and we're about to break free. Part of that process is returning to traveling abroad, which I know so many of you are eager to do. And what better way to travel abroad than equipped with knowledge of the local language? Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app, makes the whole process of learning a new language addictively fun and easy. With bite-sized lessons you can actually use in the real world, Babbel is a can't-miss travel essential that will help you order in restaurants, ask for directions, or simply gain a deeper understanding of another culture. For those listening to this show, a common target of travel is Europe. Now, I've been to Europe 3 times in my life, but I was ill-equipped with local languages apart from some very limited, greetings and salutations. If I had Babbel, though, I would have been awesomely equipped after listening to their 15-minute language lessons designed with practical, real-world conversations in mind, not the stilted language classes we took back in middle school and high school. I took French for 5 years in middle school and high school and 2 semesters in college, and well, I won't even tell you how limited my abilities are. It's because I was being taught out of a book with a chalkboard like I was an automaton. It's not how we inherently learn languages as children, and it's certainly not how you learn languages as an adult. Babbel understands this. More than 100 language experts provided Babbel with lesson plans spanning 14 different languages, from German and Italian to French and Spanish, and Babbel's speech recognition abilities help you hone your accent and pronunciation. Just imagine the many worlds that open up to you when you expand your language horizons. Babbel can help you explore those worlds, so give it a try. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code SACRED. That's BABBEL.com with the code SACRED for an extra 3 months free. I'm a dedicated user of cannabidiol, or CBD, and I have been for years now. After all, CBD isn't about what you feel, but what you don't feel. Stress, anxiety, or pain. I talk openly all the time about it. I'm an extremely anxious and stressed out person by nature, and marijuana has been tremendously helpful to me in trying to control all of that. CBD is a chemical component of marijuana that helps reduce stress and anxiety, but unlike its cousin THC, it doesn't get you stoned. Basically, you get some of the positive perks of marijuana, like pain reduction or a restful night's sleep, without getting high. It's truly a wonder substance that has changed millions of people's lives, including my own, and Feels Premium CBD is an awesome way to start reaping the benefits. Feels is a CBD tincture that, when taken, can help reduce stress, anxiety, bodily aches and pains, and sleeplessness. It's totally legal, it doesn't get you high, and there's no addictive properties or hangover whatsoever. For real, it's awesome. All you do is place a few drops underneath your tongue and you'll feel the effects in minutes, whether you're looking to just mellow out after a long day or get some extra solid Z's, with tons of other use cases in between. All you need to do is figure out the dose that's appropriate for you and what you're looking to achieve with CBD, and that's where Feels' hotline full of real people can help. And since you'll no doubt find it so useful, you'll want to take advantage of Feels' monthly membership, so you'll always have some oil on hand for when you need it. As a Feels user myself, I highly recommend their product, so give it a try for yourself. Start feeling better with Feels. Become a member today by going to feels.com/symbols, and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's feals.com/SYMBOLS to become a member and get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. That's feels.com/symbols. So, guys, hold on a second. Something has happened that's really important. I got an email from Lazy Boy. and they're ready to deliver my chair on, I'm scheduling it right now, July 3rd.
Damn it. Let's go, boy.
I'm excited. All right.
You're going to be the laziest of boys.
Oh my God. I've been waiting for this thing like you wouldn't believe. I bought it in March, I think. It takes forever. So, all right. So about this issue, I feel like, and I said this earlier, I kind of have to sit on the fence a little bit. Out of respect, not for Sony per se, who we ridicule endlessly on the show, but because of, I don't really know what we've signed as a collective unit. I am a co-owner of a developer. We are under specific, assumed NDAs from our access to, like, I have like an app on my computers that interfaces with my PlayStation devices, my debug PlayStation devices. That's like not even known outside, so there are things that, like, I've actually like looked for help with it by name, and like there's not even really very much about it. So I have to respect certain things, I think. But what I can tell you are a few things, and I wrote some of these things down. There's no doubt that the situation is completely convoluted with Sony. It used to be even worse, by the way. Everything used to be regionalized, and then you had to go through all of these steps. So remember, like, remember PlayStation Plus games were different in Europe not too long ago? Remember their games would just go up at totally different times, sometimes weeks, months later. In the PS3 era, games used to come out totally different times in different regions, sometimes by months. Remember, like, MotorStorm, I think, came out first in Europe and then later here, and so on and so forth. So it was all very weird, even with their own games. So you can only imagine how that trickled down. But you have to remember the whole PlayStation loves indies thing from the PS3 and Vita into the PS4 era was real. Sony went out and found a lot of great talent, making a lot of great games. You think about Guacamelee and Mercenary Kings and Axiom Verge and all of this. And it's funny, Dustin, because when you were talking about the featured stuff, I was thinking the same thing. It's not so surprising to me that they would say, like, we want a premium for this space.
Sure.
And I was actually always remarking that it's so funny because I was remarking to Michael like last week. I'm like, I'm surprised that they don't just plaster their own games everywhere, because I actually pulled something up, and I think today it's Doom, which is even weirder, right? Because that's like a Bethesda product. So yeah, it's always weird and different. But my thought was, like, why don't you take the same spirit of what was used to be called, and you guys might remember, called the Pub Fund, and institute that into this? So to remind people, the Pub Fund was basically a bucket of money that PlayStation side producers had to loan to indie developers. In return for basically funding their games, Sony would have limited exclusivity, timed exclusivity. And the money would be paid back on the monies brought in. So games like Mutant Blob's Attack from Drinkbox and Axiom Verge, famously from Tom Happ, and others were funded through this. Velocity 2X was funded this way, and others. And I was wondering, I'm like, why don't you have a similar spirit where it's like, okay, you want that spot. We look at your game. We kind of believe in it. We think there is a lot of promise here. How about we get 32% of your total sales? What, like, anyone that clicks on this box to buy your game, you pay 5% more to us. Like, why not have something a little more equitable? Or say, like, we want $250,000 up front for this big marquee thing for your $1 million game, and it's a loan. And we'll take $2 out of every sale until it's paid back or something like that. In other words, have some sort of partnership and belief in the product and have it be mutual, so that people it's kind of similar to the way car companies sell cars. They don't want you to buy cars cash. They want you to ideally lease them, but if you're going to buy it over time, they want to give you a 0% APR thing and stretch you out and get you on the warranty, and they want to milk you a little bit. And you would just think that maybe Sony would be a little more hip to this, to say, like, we can make money longer term and in a more equitable way, in a more friendly way, by just saying, all right, let's open this thing up and see what happens. But I can tell this was the thing. I'm going on here. I'm sorry, but it was surprising to me. I was saying earlier, like, does anyone like listen to what we're saying here? I got a PlayStation Vita dev kit, a second one. We already have one. It's right here. Here it is. And they sold this to us, or rented it to us, and then a week later said they were going to shut the PS Vita store down. Seems like that was pretty newsworthy.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone seemed to conveniently ignore that there was like a canary in the coal mine, that something was up. And then lo and behold, everything happened this way. And so I look at it through these different things. Like, I also think they have a different definition of indie. I was seeing someone, and I want to get what you think about this, Chris. Their definition of indie is fucking whacked out, because they really look at games like Kenna, right? Or something, and be like, that's an indie game, in our indie showcase. And I'm like, Kenna is like probably a $5 or $10 million game.
Yeah.
That's indie like Hades is indie. I don't think so. We make games on a shoestring. What real indie development is, and I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but indie development is like making money, and then all of that money goes into the next game, and so on and so forth. Maybe you make games for $50,000, $20,000, $30,000. And so they don't seem interested in even the definition of indie. Have you noticed that they've gotten away from that? Because I certainly have.
Yeah, it is weird that like games that seem basically AAA, or like at the worst you could say like maybe like super polished AA, you know, are like now considered indie games, like I don't know, a fucking Goose Game or whatever the hell, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I was even thinking like what was that? Bug Snacks. Everyone's like, oh, it's like indie darling, and I'm like, that's Young Horses isn't really an indie studio. I mean, Sony is like helping fund this thing, and
yeah.
In what universe is that an indie game? In what universe is that friendly to people that are struggling to make games and they make good ones? You know.
You know why it's indie? Because it's not photorealistic. that's I guess what, you know what I mean? Like it feels like art style denotes indie for some reason, which is very bizarre.
Right.
It's very confusing.
Does it have to do with budget also? Because if you think about a game like Control, I guess it's not indie because they have 505 as the publisher, but it kind of fits the same mold in the fact that Remedy is an independent studio that made it. Like, does indie mean not owned by a big publisher? Is that what that means at this point?
I don't think so, because like to me it's like indie in fairness is one of these terms, kind of like adventure game, I feel like, where it's like it kind of means different things based on like the way that you're talking about it. Like if let's say like hypothetically Beyonce isn't signed to a label, you know, and she puts out a song independently, she's not like an indie artist,
right?
You know, just because she's like not beholden to a publisher. She's fucking Beyonce. You know, it's a very, even though it might technically be true, we know that it's not the same as like some like scruffy band in Chicago like putting together like some song and publishing it themselves. Like I know this is like going into music, but I think it's very applicable too. Like it's their definition of indie seems very confusing and kind of inconsistent. And I don't really know what the solution to that is, because I feel like this is just going to persist for a while.
It's just, I don't know. I mean, Dustin, what do you think about the idea of kind of buying in a little bit? I just feel like they are certainly buying in. I mean, it's just, you could see the difference. No Man's Sky was kind of what ended up coming out of like the ultimate kind of thing that came out of this smaller idea that they would give money to smaller games. I remember going to these various events that they would have where it was like PlayStation loves indies, and you'd go and it would just be all these kiosks of games you never heard of. And so what do you think about the idea of them bringing back some pub fun type thing where because I agree with what you said. I don't have a problem with them controlling financially the storefront. It's a valuable space they can make money on. They'd be, I think, foolish not to. I just think they can do it more equitably so that they can just make money in a passive way by saying, well, just different percentages or paybacks, loans. I like that idea better.
Right. Well, it's such a weird situation too, in that we saw PlayStation, you mentioned PlayStation loves indies or whatever. And then when that started to fade away, Nintendo like picked up that mantle like pretty promptly, because I think they saw an opportunity where they were hearing that developers weren't happy with Sony. They have a console that is perfect for a lot of these indie games and its hybrid nature, the get up and go. And now it's like Sony, it's so weird to me. They got Shuhei Yoshida, who is legendary in this company, demoted to, I don't know what his official title is, head of indies or something like that. And the only thing from outward facing that we see him do is that he's the one lining up some of these bigger PlayStation Plus titles. Like you'll see him tweet, like when that Annapurna game that wasn't very good, was at. Like, you could see him tweet about it or whatever.
Right.
It's like, what is he doing? I'm not trying to, bash him at all, but it's like you have one of your biggest OGs, and that's his job. And all you hear about still to this day is how independent developers are not pleased with PlayStation. And you see a lot of them releasing their games on Nintendo and PC first, and then bringing it to PlayStation later, because they know they can get a bigger splash somewhere else.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, because a lot of these guys were saying like we sell very poorly on PlayStation. I must say that we sell almost all of our games on PlayStation. That's natural, but it is true that like you're never going to find Hybrixia unless you look for it. Unless you literally look for it, it's never going to be recommended to you, or there's never going to be like this algorithmic suggestion that you buy it, or be very rare for that to happen. That all comes from word of mouth. If we just announced Hybrixia 2 sold 10 I was about to say 10 million copies.
Shit.
10,000. I'd be like, I wouldn't be on the show right now probably, because I'd probably be in the Caribbean. But 10,000 copies, and we were so pleased by that. But 90% plus is, I would assume, from PlayStation. But the funny thing is, and it goes back to that system, even knowing how many games you sold on Sony is hysterical, like the way you have to do it. It's just like all of these spreadsheets, you have to just add these various numbers together. Like you would literally think they would say, oh, it's July 1st. In June, you sold 512 games. But it's not. It's like this literally like beautiful mind shit. And you have to go through it. And so it is true. Like sometimes you don't know quite how many games you sold. I used to not believe that when people would say that. Like, how do you not know how many games you sold? But people are like, we don't really. It's in there somewhere, and we kind of have garnered an approximate number. We think we have our number right. It's something like 10,000, like total 10,210 or something right now, or as of like June 30th. But those things are real. But at the same time, we hired an associate producer as well because we couldn't deal with this shit anymore. It was like driving Barry mad, and I couldn't participate. So
yeah,
it's a mess. We'll see what happens with this. But to your point, Dustin, about Shuhei, here's my theory, and it's not a great. I don't know if it's a great theory for Sony, but and maybe it's not true. But this is what I think is the man was in charge of Sony's first party. For some reason, he was taken off of that, demoted basically to this independent role. So it's not even like an internal role or anything, and it's not dealing with the big third party or second party partners. Like maybe it would be cool to say like Shuhei is now in charge of XDev or something. So maybe he's just not, I mean, he loves games, he plays games, he participates, but clearly he's been reined in some way. He is not the same Shuhei Yoshida of 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that might have something to do with it too. Maybe he's just not that passionate about it. I mean, why? He's probably a big difference,
Right?
I mean, he has twin daughters, I believe.
Maybe he just was like, this role is too intensive for me. Can we work on something that this isn't as much of my entire life. I mean, it could be.
Oop, that was a dog toy. Sorry. Okay, so we will keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Ben Williams wrote in, said, "Hey, Fats, did you see Kojima uses a mouse pad with Herman Holst on it? Does this confirm Kojima won't work with Xbox? How could he make an Xbox game while rubbing his mouse all over Herman's face? Did you guys see this picture? This was an interesting one, a weird one from one of Hideo Kojima's pictures in which the head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Holst, is indeed on this mouse pad. But I have some bad news for people because the guy Nebelian on Twitter that reports things like video game news. I follow him, and it says that VentureBeat is reporting, and I'm on the so people can go look now. It says Hideo Kojima's deal with Xbox reaches key milestone. And the story says Hideo Kojima and Microsoft have signed a letter of intent that states the two parties intend to work out the details on a publishing agreement for a new Xbox game, according to sources familiar with the matter. This is a key step in the negotiations between the Metal Gear Solid creator and the Xbox company. This signifies that both parties have agreed to a generalized deal while lawyers continue hashing out the finer points, and that Microsoft and Kojima's teams have spent months discussing a possible partnership, and now is more likely than ever that these conversations will bear fruit. They're apparently cloud-based. So to answer that question, no, it doesn't mean that. It is funny that happens. They're obviously good friends. But Chris, what do you make of this? It seems like maybe he's gone, actually. Maybe we're going to... It's also possible he does more than one game. I mean, I could imagine Kojima doing a game for PlayStation and a game for Xbox. And in fact, he might be one of the only creators that would really get away with something like that. as well, like from the people in charge, because you would imagine
Yeah.
part of it is like, we want you with us. But I think they'll allow that to happen. And this, I think, is a big L for Sony, because it means that they have not given him any reason to stay.
Yeah, I wonder I wonder if it has a lot to do with, just Death Stranding not doing as well as maybe they had hoped it would, or something like that, and maybe they just didn't feel like pursuing. But like I knew from the moment that Xbox was like pouring a lot of money into like Bethesda and like trying to look for other studios, that like, dude, if they don't try to get Kojima, then it's like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, it's just like it would just be a wise move to try and get something going with Kojima, and it seems like that's happening. I think if this bears any fruit, I don't believe that it's going to be. I don't believe it's going to be Xbox exclusive. Like I would probably bet that this is probably, like, if anything, timed, because it's hard for me to imagine a Kojima title like indefinitely exclusive to Xbox. That's like kind of hard to fathom. I'm not sure he would do that. I don't know Kojima super well, so I don't know that like as a fact or anything, but it just seems like a weird reality. Stranger things have happened though, so
yeah, it does. I actually think that there might be some truth to what you're saying. Here's why. There could be truth, and I wonder what you think of this, Dustin, with your convenient shirt on today. That we know Sony and Microsoft, PlayStation and Xbox are working together on a cloud project. We know that Sony is using Microsoft's resources, as we know, right, openly, and that they've released these press releases about some sort of symbiotic relationship in rough terms between them. Maybe this is a game that will run on that service that will then maybe somehow come to PlayStation. But I think bigger than that, Dustin, is, and that's just obviously an out there theory, but I think bigger than that for me is this notion that Kojima really possibly didn't get an appetizing deal from Sony. And that either means that, per Chris's point, they weren't interested in working with him again after Death Stranding, which I just find impossible to believe, or the offer wasn't tantalizing enough. Because I'm not saying that they should go and buy that studio. I don't think Kojima is for sale like that. That doesn't seem like he wants to make movies and do other things too. But don't you think it's strange from that perspective that you can kind of read between the lines? He must have had suitors of all sorts. And to choose Microsoft just means that what I've been hearing behind the scenes is true, which is that they're just writing absurd checks to get a lot of these games. So what do you make of that kind of angle?
Well, I'm curious. I'm trying to remember what this specific rumor was, but I remember there was something floating around that Kojima wants this, whatever this project is, it may be episodic. And I remember seeing a rumor somewhere that it was pitched to Sony and they were like, we could do this, but it's not going to be episodic. Like they don't want to do that. But I can't remember exactly where I saw that. But I could understand that maybe Sony is a little less willing to let Kojima do whatever he wants. Obviously, the three of us loved Death Stranding. I think Death Stranding is one of the most unique and honestly one of the most incredible games I've ever played, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I love it. I thought it was great.
But the market said differently. The market spoke otherwise. Not that it was a failure, but you can understand now, especially with Sony, their focus on blockbuster titles, that they're like, we want to keep working with you, but an episodic horror game that deals in cloud-based services in ways that no one's ever seen before, maybe not. Like, maybe can we hone this in as something a little more safe? And Kojima's like, fuck off. I'll go talk to my buddy Phil and get this done my way. And I think the other thing to consider also is just that while this deal with Xbox sounds like it's probably happening, the rumors sound consistent and from reputable people, is it possible that Kojima Productions is going to start doing multiple projects? They had that second studio that was opening up alongside Guerrilla, right? In the
Netherlands. Yeah.
In the Netherlands.
They were hiring for that studio at some point and then it kind of went quiet. So yeah, it's possible.
Right. So just because this is happening, I wouldn't say that's like Xbox, they got him. I mean, maybe they do, but maybe they don't.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
That's right.
So we'll see what happens. I'm curious about this too. It's a great mystery, but we don't have much more to say about it right now because we just don't know for sure. I agree. It sounds like the sources are reputable. It sounds like this is going to happen with Xbox. And so now, as I mentioned too, the only hanging chad here, as it were, is the idea of them doing something else with someone else. But it just doesn't seem, I believe that they're working on multiple projects, but I just know he's more of a multimedia guy. And I know that he wants to do other things outside of games and might be great at doing things outside of games too. He's a great visionary and frustrating sometimes, and certainly annoying to work with, it seems like, in some way, as auteurs typically are. But it bears fruit, and I'm a little... you kind of understand Sony's logic, Dustin, if what you're saying is true, just in episodic games are not popular. People don't want them. They want the game all at once. It actually goes against the entire grain of buying a complete game. It's what killed, obviously, why can't it Telltale? So anyway,
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up another story, if I might. This Chris Avellone. I don't know if it's Chris Avellone or Chris Avellone. I had a teacher, kindergarten teacher, Miss Leone, and it was Leone, so it could be a similar thing. But this is a guy that wrote a bunch of stuff like Neverwinter Nights, I think, and he worked on KOTOR 2, and he was at Obsidian. He worked on other games, Fallout New Vegas, I think, and Dying Light 2 most recently. And he was accused last year of sexual impropriety by a number of women, and he has sued two of them in court in California for libel. And what I was reading about this, and obviously our friend Rick Hogue covered this on Virtual Legality and other places, is this is kind of a far-fetched thing that probably won't work, and it's unclear if it's actually benefiting him at all. But Dustin, I was curious what you thought about this kind of breakout, because my one takeaway was not, I don't know him from a fucking hole in the wall, to be honest. I've never even met him in person at any event or anything like that. But I do feel like a person, maybe not literally, but certainly figuratively, deserves to render a defense. And it shouldn't necessarily be assumed that people are always telling the truth about things. But it's also possible that a person's reputation is damaged to such a degree that it doesn't really matter if they look bad doing this, even if they really did it, because they have nothing to lose. So it could really be one of two things or one of many outcomes. But I'm wondering what you thought of this whole drama. I just thought it was unfair that people were jumping all over the accusations, but then not really writing about the fact that he is trying to defend himself.
Right. And I think some of this ties into our friend Eric Kane, who had a bit of he was the first one to really write about it, right? Yeah. On Forbes.
Right.
And he got into a little bit of a spat with the editor-in-chief of The Gamer, who honestly I feel like just did for some just horrendous shit as far as reporting on him. Yeah. On Chris Avellone and the way that they refused to report on the other stuff. So yeah, that's not good. But I don't want to speak on this too much because I really am not familiar with what he was even accused of. I started to watch, there's like this really long, like 25-minute YouTube video, like kind of breaking down some of the stuff that happened and some of the evidence. And to my understanding, what's really fishy about this is that some of the accusers have gone and deleted many tweets around the supposed events that may damage their story. Which, here's the thing, guys. Why do people keep deleting tweets? I get it. They feel like it makes them safe. It doesn't. If you post a tweet, it's out there. Unless you're like that, let's say if it's a few weeks old, it's on the Internet Archive. Like,
yeah. You can get on the Wayback Machine or whatever the hell.
Right. So it's like, I don't understand why people are like, oh, this is gonna, save me. Like you ran this dude out of an industry and now eyes are on you in this situation and tweets get deleted. It's like, it's not going to save you, but maybe not. Maybe I don't know the full situation. I just found that like really interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out too. In the fact that like Hogue has talked about before, that just like suing someone for libel is very, very difficult. But if you got to imagine that he knows that. and he wouldn't be willing to do it. Maybe he's got a lot of money and he's just like, I don't care if I lose. I need to make this case and make it public so people know the truth, even if I lose.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he wrote a Medium piece too, kind of outlining some things. He actually wrote two of them. One was like this kind of truncated version, and then the other was like this really long one. I agree with you. I don't know the ins and outs of the case too much. I was just really put off by just the push and pull of media and how much furor was around the accusations, which may or may not be true. But then you would think that an important follow-up to that immediately would be when these charges were filed, or these accusations were filed with the court. And it seems like you're right. I when I tweeted out about it too, I'm like, as I understand, libel is very hard to prove. It's like much easier apparently to prove in places like England, and people get sued for libel all the time there. But here in the US, it's freedom of speech issue and all the rest. So
yeah,
just want to keep an eye out on that as we move forward. Not much more to say. Chris, do you have anything to add about this issue?
I think I would pretty much echo like everything that Dustin said. I think he and I are on pretty much the same exact page.
We have a couple more things to talk about before we move into the games we're playing. Cole Kissinger wrote into us, as many people did on Patreon. He says, "Hello, gentlemen. In short, what the hell is going on with the Blue Box situation? After last week's show, Hassan Karaman delayed the reveal of his studio's app to August. Is there more to this, or is this just a guy who is in way over his head? I'm leaning towards the latter personally, but would like to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you for the amazing content and have a great rest of the week." This is funny, Chris, because with what we just talked about with Kojima, it does seem now like maybe this is nothing. And what a weird and unfortunate situation this is. What do you make about this evolution?
Yeah, I mean, there's also there is some other news that we'll get into later that is more directly tied to some of the rumors that we've been hearing about this studio and the potential like Silent Hill that they're working on, in air quotes. But man, this is fucking so bad. This is so bad for this dev. I feel so shitty for them, but at the same time, it's like I there's part of me that's just like, why did you not? They kind of went with it, you know? So like it's on some level, I feel like, that's, man, they're in a really shitty situation. And on the other hand, I'm like, well, they didn't have to be, but they just sort of let it happen. So like, I don't know. This Blue Box thing is so Pepe Sylvia to me at this point.
Oh yeah. It's fun and fascinating, but there's actually an article, Dustin, on Push Square, which is a site I really like, Liam Croft wrote. And he says in part that this is just the next twist in a tale that continues to sit uncomfortably with us. We don't know how anyone can believe Hideo Kojima is still involved in this because of how suspicious the entire thing is. And then he goes later on to say something that's interesting. He says, you have to question whether any game even exists at all by this point. Karaman says the app was delayed because of bugs and localization issues, with the latter cited as the reason for the app's delay from Tuesday to today. And this was last Friday. It's then fairly suspicious to push it all the way back to August, announcing it so in a Twitter video, especially when Blue Box Game Studios claims Sony is involved in the project, except it's absolutely not. There was a time when we felt sorry for the developer as the internet rushed to find tenuous links between Abandon and Hideo Kojima, but that attention now needs to be focused on whether there's any game here at all. We remind you that not a single second of Abandon has actually been shown. The announcement trailer is made up of a cheap Unreal Engine assets that anyone can buy. And he said, no, the teaser, we didn't have a lot of time, so Sony wanted something real quick, so we had to have something to show, and that was not the game at all. So the game will be different, Karaman previously claimed. Is this one big scam? We've requested a comment from Sony on the matter. It is very weird. I mean, I agree with what Liam is saying here. It's strange. It's just very strange. Why? And we're talking about how Sony doesn't want to deal with anyone and how difficult they are to deal with, and then they want to deal with this fucking person?
Yeah.
So there's something to this. It's weird.
Here's the thing, Colin, is that the app exists because people that are friends with Hassan on PlayStation, actually me now, he accepted my friend request. People have seen him playing a game called Abandon Real-Time Trailer.
Right.
So there's something, at least something, I don't know. Here's a question, okay? I've just leaned into the fact, even if I'm swayed multiple ways, I'm just going to go with the stance that I believe, right? So we'll just go with that. Right now, Sony today and over this week has dropped some big bombshells that we're going to talk about in the show just a little bit. Kind of odd. that you would announce some big bombshells when there's also a rumored event. Now, the theories is that PlayStation's event that they wanted to have in early July has been postponed. Particularly one rumor that I read, which I don't know if it's true or not, is that it's being delayed because of Activision and Call of Duty. That is something we have heard repeatedly, is that Call of Duty this year has been not so hot and been in trouble, and they're really scrambling to get it together. So they wanted to reveal the new Call of Duty at the State of Play and then follow it up with their own thing or something. So there's some kind of deal there, potentially. So let's say Sony's event is delayed till August, then it would, and that was a recent decision that was recently made, then, his app has also been delayed. Like, I don't know. It just, Sony's actions, especially with the announcements that they've made, just doesn't make sense for them to just put out on Twitter. This seems like something you'd want to include with a summer event, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's all bizarre. I don't know what to believe, and I don't know how to feel, and we'll see. I mean, that's all I could really say about that, right? Like, we'll see what happens, but
yeah,
I'm almost tired of talking about it because it really is, as Chris said, just speculative Pepe nonsense at this point. Always Sunny in Philadelphia type nonsense. So we'll keep an eye out, and maybe you're right, Dustin. Maybe this is all interconnected with the rumors that are percolating.
Who knows?
Big Squeak wrote in and said, "Hey guys, Colin has often said, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free, which I've used often to my wife, who correctly stated that this is often a sexual term. Pretty sure I've used it at work, so thanks for that. Yes, I Googled it and she's right. Yeah, no, it is a sexual term. It's something that like a mother would say to like the daughter when she's 20 years old and she's, sleeping with her boyfriend, and she's going to say like, why is he going to buy the cow when he gets the milk for free? That's what the term comes from. So yes, yes, it is. I'm sorry that you used it in those situations, but that is certainly the provenance.
He got laid off,
and now he's fired
because he quoted Colin in the office.
And Attila Farsang wrote in us and said, "Hello, CDC. As a proud owner of 2 kids, aged 9 and 3, I often wonder if they decided to turn on me. How long would they last? I'm a 300-pound man who's 6 feet. Yes, that's not all muscles, but nonetheless, I outweigh them by quite a bit. I figure it would take 30 children of that age to finally take me down using only fists. What say you? How many children would it take to take you all down? I'm curious to know the answer." So this is obviously a well-trodden question. I wanted to bring this up because he said, he doesn't say originally how would we respond? He clearly says, I wonder if they decided to turn on me, how long would they last?
Yeah.
And that's the question I want to tackle today. So a 300-pound man, 6 feet, 300 pounds, he's attacked by his 9-year-old and his 3-year-old. Chris, how long do those children survive?
I mean, I think they would win because a true parent wouldn't just obliterate their kids.
Oh.
Right? You would imagine
after school
that would be
style,
something
like
that it's... Yeah, you would imagine. I like how he says owner of 2 kids. Yeah. It seems so dehumanizing. But I mean, I guess it is a question about murdering them. So like, I guess my assumption would be like, I don't think he would have it in him to really fight back. So I think he would just be destroyed. But in a situation where, let's say, he gets mind wiped and like Men in Blacked, and he doesn't know who these kids are. They're just attacking him for no reason. I would imagine that they would last 9 years. What is it? 9 years old and 3 years old?
Yep, 9 and 3. You're dealing with 2 very different styles there of enemy.
Yeah, different combat. Yeah. Different combat styles for those ages. I think this is lasting maybe a minute, maybe. Yeah, they're not lasting that long.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Dustin. What do you think? How long do those kids last?
Oh, less than 30 seconds. Yeah. I think if there's we're talking about like Chris used the mind wipe. I'm thinking like kind of like falling down, like he just like the movie where the guy just goes nuts. Like one day he's just like can't take it anymore, and easy targets probably.
I'm gonna say my answer is kind of similar to Dustin's, although I understand what Chris is saying. Where I'm sorry, it's similar to Chris. Although I understand what Dustin is saying with the idea that these are not, what are they gonna do? It's as long as they're going to live as long as he wants them to live in this situation.
Right.
Because the minute he decides that it's like an elephant that has a fly, and eventually it fixates on the fly with its trunk and smashes it at some point.
Yeah.
It's over for the fly. So tolerates the fly, so on, and then no longer do you tolerate the fly. Okay, so when I discuss Manscaped, I'm typically talking about shaving and buzzing and the like, and that's all well and good, and we'll get to that. But what about your nails, gentlemen? I think you need to be better about taking care of those too. And Manscaped can help you do that and take care of your other male grooming needs with their 4th generation performance package and their Shears 2.0 nail grooming kit, both of which you can find at manscaped.com, where you can get 20% off your order with free shipping by using the checkout code SACRED. Now, this performance package, the so-called 4.0, its central component is the lawnmower trimmer. This bad boy allows you to shave below your belt with complete confidence. No more shady business down there with your girlfriend's razor and the barber saw. No more wishes and prayers and squints. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The lawnmower has a 7,000 RPM motor and even a handy dandy LED light, so you can see in all of those unfortunate crevices, and it's not going to cut you up. It's even waterproof, which is arguably its best feature, since that means you can use it in the shower and not make a disturbing mess. If nose and ear hair also trouble you, you'll be pleased to know that the performance package also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. And back to your nails. Seriously, you need to clip and clean and fix those nails on both your hands and feet. It's summer. The Shears 2.0 kit with its tweezers, scissors, nail file, and nail clipper will help you take care of whatever the hell is going on with all of that. Whatever you choose, though, you'll find the same high-quality craftsmanship and fair pricing. I'm a Manscaped user myself, believe it or not. I'm a lawnmower fan. I highly recommend it, and you can marinate on whatever mental picture that conjures up for you, I insist. To get 20% off your order with free shipping, use the code SACRED at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SACRED, that's SACRED, at manscaped.com. That's MANSCAPED.com. Tame that summer swamp in your pants with Manscaped. That's it. That's all we have. Let's get into what we're playing. Chris, we'll start with you. We actually have here a list of 6 different games split between the 3 of us. Let's talk about the games you're playing. Oh, how's Ratchet?
Yeah, I'm still playing Ratchet. Still slowly making my way through it. Haven't had that much time to play games this week, sadly. I've been all over the place. But I'm still enjoying it. You know, I think it's maybe losing a little bit of, I feel like it's running out of tricks. You know, it's running out of ways to keep me as entertained. But I'm still enjoying it. It's a pretty solid game so far. But I decided out of nowhere to jump back into Metro Exodus.
Oh.
Because I had seen that there was a PS5 upgrade for free. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that because I've seen some trailers of that and I've seen like screenshots and it looks gorgeous. And I jumped back into it and it is fucking gorgeous. Like it looks so stupid good that I'm actually like super excited to kind of jump back into it. I know now is probably not the ideal time, but like, I feel like it's one of these things where it's like, oh, it's grabbing me now more than it did the first time I played it. So like now is probably the time where I'm like, all right, I'm going to try and see this through as much as I can because I'm really into it. And also I totally forgot what the hell I was doing the last time I was playing. So it's like, it's a 1-2, like perfect scenario for me. It's just the atmosphere in that game is so good. And I think honestly, maybe seeing Stalker 2 at this E3 maybe got me in the mood to kind of like trudge around some Russian wastelands.
Yeah, you want some Eastern European FPS? I got you.
Yeah. And I always like, I appreciated Metro, but like I could never like dive full on into them. Something about the first few being very linear and even Metro Exodus coming out initially around so many other things. I just got too distracted. And now it's like with this upgrade, it just feels like a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gorgeous, man. It is a pretty fucking game.
Well,
like unreal.
What's so exciting to me, Chris, about that is that a lot of times people think about ray tracing as reflections, but the big thing in that game is ray trace lighting.
Yeah.
And like, man, there's a great Digital Foundry video where they show you like, it has to do with like, if light comes in a room, it spreads the light out in a very particular way. And game designers used to have to fake it by lighting the room kind of unnaturally. But with ray trace lighting, it's able to do it like very realistically, and it completely changes how some scenes look. And what they did was really impressive on on consoles, like just crazy.
No, yeah, it's fully transformative, I think, because like a lot of what's cool about Metro and a lot of what's cool about that kind of genre of survival, like scavenging horror in general, is just using like things like your flashlight to see in like really dark areas. Whereas like in the default version of Metro Exodus that I played on PS4 a couple years ago, or however long ago, I'm pretty sure it's years old at this point. I think like maybe 2 years old, I think, something like that. You know, there was a lot of like pre-baked lighting in a lot of rooms just to kind of help the player see. But now because everything's ray traced, brights are really bright, but dark areas are super, super dark. So you need that flashlight more often. And that's just really nice because I feel like flashlights are in a lot of FPSs, but they're not useful in any of them, really. Like, because no game is brave enough to really like just put you in a pitch black darkness because they want you to see like, ooh, the skybox is beautiful and look at how beautiful this tree looks in the nighttime. And it's like, you know, they kind of want to cheat and kind of have this, here's a blue filter over everything. So it's nighttime, but not really. So I just appreciate that, like, from what little I've played of Metro Exodus so far, it's like there's like a lot of natural light and there's daylight, but like there are dark areas where you need your flashlight, and it's like super immersive and it feels really good. I can't remember if Metro Exodus was 60 frames on PS4. I doubt it. I feel like I remember it not running super well, but now that it's super smooth and it's gorgeous, it's really grabbing me again. And that makes me happy because I really did enjoy what little I played of it the first time. I just got sucked away.
Yeah, it's a game. First of all, to your point, it came out February in 2019 on PS4, back in June on PS5. I feel the same. I bought it when it came to PS4 and just never had a chance to play it because I platinumed the other two, Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light, and it's been kind of goading me in as well. I think I'm probably going to play it in the coming weeks because I'd like to really get to it. I'm just looking at screenshots and video of it a little bit. And it's kind of I want to play a shooter right now. So yeah. Glad you're enjoying
it's
those.
So pretty, dude.
Dustin, what are you playing?
Yes. Mainly Mario Golf. I'm sorry. It's a Nintendo game on our PlayStation show.
Mario Golf's great series.
Pretty good, but I will say this is not a hot take. A lot of people are like, this is not hitting quite as well because we have Everybody's Golf still in the back of our mind, which just makes me sad because I don't know what Sony's relationship is with Clap Hands now. We know that Clap Hands went and released a phone game, but just makes me, when I'm playing it, I'm like, this is a pretty good game. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to keep playing it, but I'm always thinking that Everybody's Golf was just really, really good. Like the ultimate golf arcadey golf game. And it's really good. The other two, good.
I was just going to say, Camelot is the studio that makes all the Mario Golf games, and they were a Sega team back in the day. They made Shining Force and all of the rest, but Nintendo doesn't own them, so they could do whatever they want with this IP if they wanted to go in a different direction. But it is worth noting that they've made, I think, every Mario Golf game. So yeah, I doubt that's going to happen. Go on.
It's a little bare bones. That's the one thing that
I was going to say too about that. I tweeted out about it. I was like, I'm going to buy this. It looks great. But then I heard it's not very robust. And I was like, well, I'm not buying that then. I remember the N64 and GameCube ones, which I was in love with. People were saying that there's less content in this one than there is in those. And I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. So I'm not buying this.
Dude, okay, I have to tell you guys one funny thing, because there's a story mode, which I was excited to check out. I thought it would be this fun, cute little thing, and it may be. When you talk to characters, they make sounds, and so like you'll talk to Toad and be like, wah, 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 and it just does the same two sounds over and over, and then there will be like the big, he's like a hammer bone, he's like, like just over and over, and I want to like I can't play it. Because every time it's talking, it's like the same sounds. Like Birdo's like, wah, 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 wah. Anyone who's playing who's played Mario Golf is triggered right now because they know what I'm talking about. It's too much. Anyway, PlayStation game that I'm playing I played some of Sackboy Finally, I know people have been wanting us to check this out. Not a lot of time. I was playing co-op with Holly, and we both decided that we don't really like playing it co-op. It's one of those games that kind of reminds me of a Mario 3D World in that it has co-op, but it just makes the game somewhat more annoying to play. Just because you got to stay on the same screen, you like have the ability to jump and throw each other. And then there's like a competition to race to the end, which I'm trying to collect everything. And so I'm going to play more of it, but not with Holly. Sorry. It's nothing about her. It's about the game.
That's fine.
And then finally, Destiny 2 has really, really hooked me. I'm almost ready to do the raid. I'm almost light level 1300, I believe.
Yeah, that's what you need.
That's what we need. So it's almost a vault time. So stay tuned because we will stream that as a long streaming event. It'll be very cool. Still figuring out the details, though.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to say, I was just reading about this as you were going over that. I didn't know this, so this is a new piece of information to me. Camelot made the first Everybody's Golf game.
Really?
Then they started making the Mario Golf games. Clap Hands started making Everybody's Golf with Everybody's Golf 2.
Interesting.
So very interesting. I didn't know that. I always thought Clap Hands did all of them. So there you go. A little piece of information for everyone. Finally, the only game I've really been messing around with this week is Scarlet Nexus. I've played probably about 10 hours of it. It's really good. I really like it. I've never played a game like this, action role-playing game combined with a really pretty deep visual novel. The story is cool. It's actually kind of interesting about like a rebellion and this kind of totalitarian government and all of the rest. It gives me a lot of Freedom Wars vibes for all the Vita fans out there. I really feel like this game is similar to that in some ways, and it gives me a lot of Control vibes. It's the combat, you use like telekinesis to move things around and destroy enemies. It's very similar to that, but it's more of like a melee version of that because you're using a sword to kind of supplement your attacks. And it's got this really clever combat system wherein you have different party members and they do their own thing. You can kind of, in a very Tales-like way, some of the studio that made Tales made this game or makes Tales. So not a surprise. You can kind of set your different modifiers to how your AI should fight, but you can use the R1 button and activate their different skills. So, and they refresh. So like one of your characters will give you like flame attacks and another one will make you invincible or invisible. And others will do whatever, strengthen your defense or, and so on. So there's a lot of really cool combat in it and very charming kind of system wherein you have a hideout and you talk to everyone individually and there's like this email system and it's pretty cool. If you're looking for a very action oriented role-playing game that's like all about the movement and action, then I wouldn't play this game. But if you're looking for something that's kind of unique and different, I would recommend it. I think it's really cool so far. It also has 2 different campaigns. I don't know how different they are, but you choose your protagonist in the beginning and they cross paths at different times. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. So you can play it twice. I will say that it's totally unoptimized for PS5. There's draw distance problems, which is unbelievable because this game looks like a PS3 game in a lot of different ways. So I also feel like the animation wasn't tailor-made for 60 frames. I think it runs at 60 frames on PS5, but it looks really weird when he's running. His animation is just so fast and strange looking. So there's little things like that. The game has crashed on me a couple of times as well. I've had almost no crashing problems on PS5, so that's very notable to me. And I also pointed out to someone on Twitter that you can just tell the game wasn't optimized for PS5 because it takes like 4 or 5 seconds to save. And when you're playing PS5, you just know that you just get used to the fact that the game's just almost like it's not even happening. And so I was a little surprised by the draw distance issues and all the rest, but it's very fun.
I want to check it out.
Yeah, you were recommending it to me because you were like, dude, it's kind of like Control. It's very anime, though. You said,
yeah. Oh, it's very anime.
It's very anime.
Worth noting that as well. And indeed, Sir Deathspank wrote into it. Sir Deathspank wrote into us and said, "Greetings, sons of Colin. By now, you must have heard the great news or the great reviews of Scarlet Nexus, and they're right. This game is amazing. However, no one is talking about that it's not broken. No crashes, no game-breaking bugs, no corrupt save files. In this day and age, having a AAA game that works should be a cause for celebration." I wanted to bring that up because you're not hearing that because it's just not the case for a lot of people. Everyone seems, I'm not saying this is the case, but even when I tweet out like a positive thing and have some sort of critique, everyone seems like they need to defend the game. Well, I'm not having problems. Well, this is the exact opposite problem because I think people are having some issues. And again, having played so much on PS5 since it's come out, I have not had any games crash on me like more than once. Even Returnal didn't really fuck around with me, which is crazy. Nicholas Jensen wrote into us and said, hey there, fellas. I was just wondering if any of you had any suggestions for a game that isn't too serious. Lately, I've been playing all too serious games, and I would love one to play so that if I miss a cutscene, I will still know what's going on. Or one where I can turn the volume off while listening to a podcast. Just a chill game. What I want to recommend? Try the Spyro trilogy that came out back in, I guess, 2018, I want to say. The re-release of the remakes of the first 3 games from Toys from Bob, I believe. They did that, right? I think they did. It's really, really great. And that's a very mindless collectathon type game, fun platinums to get. So that's my recommendation. Do you guys have any, Dustin, do you have a kind of a suggestion for a game that's not too serious that Nicholas might want to play?
Maybe this is, I'm trying to figure out if this is the right answer. For me, I want to say Destiny 2 in that it's as serious as you want it to be. If you want to dive into the lore and know, like every weapons have lore and stuff like that, you can. But if you want to chill out and listen to a podcast while you grind stuff out, I do that sometimes. It's fantastic. If I want to hop on Discord and hang out with the boys, I can do that. And it's free to check out. So there's no strings attached.
Chris, do you have any suggestions?
I mean, my answer would have been Destiny 2. That's like a good answer because it is as serious as you want it to be. Like there's a lot of shit there, but it's totally in the background. You can ignore it and still have a pretty good time. I think that's like a really safe bet, especially because it's free. If you want to buy a new game, I think the Spyro trilogy is also a great thing. I would say, you know what, honestly, might be a little pricey if you're thinking of picking this up purely for just the game, but I think sincerely Crash Bandicoot 4 is fucking fantastic. And I it's also one of those games where I'm not paying attention to the story at all. It is just really solidly designed. It's really cute. It's pretty. It runs really well. It's challenging. But it's also it's about as challenging as you make it because you could go through the levels and they're not really hard, but then there's the completionist challenges, which are way, way harder. And you can kind of pace yourself through that game really, 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 really well. And I just think it deserves a little bit more praise than it's gotten because it's damn good.
And speaking of games that I want to play anyway coming up, Leo Sanchez wrote in and said, greetings, boys. With new game releases slowing down for a bit after Ratchet, any one of you fine gentlemen jumping into the cutesy and not at all horrific world of Doki Doki Literature Club? Now that it's on PS5, I bet that would make a hell of an interesting spoiler cast. I totally want to play it. All I know about it is that it's not what it seems, and it's been highly recommended to me. And I can tell by the name when it was uploaded. That's when I started reading about it. I'm like, that's a Doki Doki Literature Club. This is some weird, and it sounds great, but I don't know very much about it, so I don't even know what to expect. Dustin, have you played it?
Yes, it's fantastic. I played the free version years ago, and this is one I was thinking about recommending to you, Colin, because I'm very careful with my recommendations. I was going to wait to play it again, but dude, it's $12 right now on sale, a launch sale at $12.50 on PlayStation. So if you do end up playing it, Colin, I would be totally down to do a spoiler cast on it.
It's on the list. I definitely want to play it as well. Got to get through Scarlet Nexus. What else? I've kind of given up on the Returnal Platinum because I'm getting so frustrated just looking for... I've played through the second world probably 25 times now looking for the thing I'm missing. And I'm like, I'm not fucking doing this. This is just fucking stupid. That you're making me do this. I am so interested in seeing and doing more, but why are you making it so annoying for me? How much more time do you want out of me? I can't give it anymore, but I'll save that for the spoiler cast we do next week. Chris, did you play or have heard of Doki Doki Literature Club?
I have heard of it. I am familiar with what it is. I am familiar with the twists. So a lot of it would be lost on me, but
dang it.
That game was kind of memed to high heaven, back when it came out. There was all these photoshops of the moments that are pretty notable about it. So probably not going to jump into it. Also, just because it's not really my kind of game in general. Not really big on. It's like a visual novel, right?
Yeah, it's 2017 freeware visual novel. Um, 2000, yeah, September 22nd, 2017, and then this is the plus version, which is I guess the paid version.
Know.
Team Salvato is the developer.
It's hard for me to get into like even games that I like things like even like visual novels that I tend to like I don't know if you would call Phoenix Wright a visual novel, but like I kind of like Phoenix Wright, and like I like that world, and I like that character. It's like I like the tone of it, I like the music, and just kind of like the general vibe of those games. But I just can't get it out of my head that like while I'm playing a visual novel, I'm like my brain is not occupied enough. Like I feel like when I'm playing a video game, I like to be moving around. I like to always be hitting some inputs. I like to always be, I don't like sitting with the controller and like reading.
Right.
You know, because I feel like I could just read a book or, you know, do any number of other things that are a little bit easier to multitask with. Or I could listen to an audiobook while I'm working or something. You know, it's like I can't get out of the productivity mindset when I'm playing a virtual novel. Maybe one day that'll change when my hands are like, you know, destroyed by arthritis and carpal tunnel.
Yeah,
soon enough. Editing and guitar and
soon enough.
typing, but you know,
you're gonna have like little claw hands, like
it's gonna be like a Scary Movie 2 with the mashed potato guy.
Grab my hand, my good hand, whatever the hell he says. It's funny. Like I want to know a little bit more about this game. Going to go in blind. I like visual novels. I would consider Phoenix Wright a visual novel. It's a little bit more of an adventure game as well because there's puzzles to it and stuff. But
yeah,
I like, you know, and I love Danganronpa and all the rest. So we'll see how it goes. I'll have more to say about it when I play it. By the way, before we get any further, I do want to note one other thing has since leaked since we started recording. It's not really a leak, but GamesBeat writes that I guess they're confirming that Motive is indeed working on a new Dead Space game, which Eurogamer and Gamatsu first reported the existence of, as the article says. And it says, while a new Dead Space is coming, Motive is rebooting the franchise with a full-fledged remake. For its Dead Space game, Motive is taking notes from Capcom's recent Resident Evil remakes. Like Resident Evil 2 remake, expect the next Dead Space to use the original game as a strong foundation, but it should also have modern visuals, and it will likely bring in new gameplay mechanics inspired by other entries in the franchise. So just some new Dead Space updates. Sounds like there will be 2 Dead Space games, so not a huge surprise there. I think I said that last week, that I suspected that they would both remake or re-release the old games and do something new. So just wanted to throw that out there. But let's get into the real news in earnest. And this is a long one, so bear with me, but it's important we get into this now. Number 1, after a decade and a half of close partnerships, Sony has officially purchased Housemarque. The Finnish team is a mid-sized developer at around 100 heads and was founded in 1995, combining 2 existing teams in Finland, Bloodhouse and Terramarque. Its early PlayStation Network exclusive PS3 title, Super Stardust HD, a reimagining of the team's original 1993 game Stardust and its 1996 sequel, Super Stardust, was PSN's very first critical and commercial smash hit in 2007. It was also the first game to receive trophies in 2008. Housemarque started as a PC-centric studio, and its first console game was actually the 2002 Xbox exclusive Transworld Snowboarding. It also released the excellent Ubisoft-published side-scroller Outland in 2011, ported Angry Birds to PS3 and Xbox 360 on behalf of Activision that same year, and released a self-published game in the form of 2017's Nex Machina. But Housemarque is otherwise entirely known for their work as a Sony second-party team. Following Super Stardust HD, Dead Nation came to PS3 in 2010. The PS Vita launch game Super Stardust Delta launched in 2011 and 2012. The beloved PS4 launch game Resogun followed in 2013. Dead Nation's spiritual successor Alienation followed from there in 2016. And then seldom discussed Matterfall was released in 2017. Sony funded and published all of those games, in addition to the recently released PS5 roguelike third-person shooter, Returnal. In a letter announcing the news, Herman Hulst, the head of PlayStation Studios, noted in part, quote, Housemarque's recent release of Returnal proves the studio is one with incredible vision, capable of creating memorable new games that resonate with our community. This addition enhances the creative force of PlayStation Studios, end quote. In an interview with the publication GQ, Hulst expanded on his relationship with Housemarque behind the scenes, noting that it was staff from the studio that helped his old team, Guerrilla, get PSP's Killzone Liberation out the door in 2006, a year before Housemarque's first Sony-published game. Quote, what stood out then was how technically capable the core team was at Housemarque, and you've been able to witness that in all the titles that they've been making pretty much for every single PlayStation platform since. From my perspective, they're the perfect fit for PlayStation Studios with a very strong identity in terms of kind of games that they make. They always had that super intense arcade style, but they've been able to innovate by creating their own genre with a roguelike that's got a nicely layered story on top, end quote. And yes, it sadly sounds like the days of their iconic twin-stick arcade games are done, albeit not at all surprisingly. Studio head Alari Kutinen told GQ in part that his team is, quote, looking into what we've done now and building upon it. Certainly, Returnal is kind of a stepping stone for us. When we're thinking about the future of titles, they'll maybe even be bigger and more ambitious, end quote. So that's everything there for now. Chris, what do you think of this? Housemarque is now a first-party team.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. When I think of Housemarque, I kind of think first party anyway. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like this was kind of already the case in some way, like kind of at least in the minds of a lot of players anyway. So I think it makes a ton of sense to acquire Housemarque. I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner, to be honest.
Yeah, so it seems like, Dustin, this deal was moving in the background for about a year or more. And it was interesting in the GQ article you read, which is an interview with the founder of the studio and Herman Hulst, so Larry Kutinen. He says that they have not seen each other in person the entire time this conversation has been going on. So like they've never been able to actually meet in person, although they obviously know each other. And I know him as well. They've always been really accessible when their games would be at events and stuff. And they're a really nice group of people. And like Michael Havari, who is their marketing guy, is a friend of mine, and he's a really nice dude. That they have a strong presence at these shows. So I've always appreciated their accessibility. But what do you think about them kind of joining and making this official? Like Chris said, it seems like this has been a long time in coming, and you'll be pleased to know that I was just searching for, out of curiosity, my old IGN stuff, because I used to write like, Sony should buy these 5 studios, or what studio should Sony buy? And it's always Housemarque in all the old articles. It's so funny. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this makes sense. Obviously, there's a good partnership there that has been going on for years. Though, Colin, you didn't mention the game Furmins that they made.
They did, yeah. They did make
for
Furmins.
Okay,
that was an iOS game, wasn't it?
iOS and Vita, yeah, but it wasn't. I don't think that was partnered with Sony at all. So that makes sense you didn't mention it. But I about died when I realized that they were the ones that made that game. So one thing that I will say that I'm sure is the case is that Sony had to have gotten Housemarque for a very, very good deal, because my theory is that Housemarque was probably in some pretty bad financial, not trouble, but like, taking on water after Nex Machina's middling success. They started working on a battle royale that clearly wasn't panning out. And then they got this deal with Sony. And then I'm guessing that they got them for a very, very good price.
Yeah, I would venture a guess of below 50 million, I would say. I mean, I don't know, but maybe that'll become public in their new financials, because you have to just consider $229 million for Insomniac, which I think is a steal. That's like that's 2 separate buildings and 2 separate states and so the rest, but maybe not. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, but I think the price was probably right. And I think also that Sony has shown a very consistent willingness to work with them, even when things weren't going great for them. And I think you'll remember that it was kind of an ebb and flow. Like Super Stardust was huge. That game was huge. Everyone loved Super Stardust early in the PS3's life cycle. That's a fucking great game. By the way, if you've never played a Super Stardust game, you absolutely must. There's a PS4 iteration that was ported by another team, but has Housemarque's endorsement and all the rest. Really good stuff. Also, the launch game for Vita, Super Stardust Delta, is in my mind the best Vita launch game, and just an absolutely phenomenal game as well. But so things were going well for them with those games, but then things were a little soft. They did Outland with the Ubisoft in 2011, which was very good, but no one really played it. Like you said, they had these kind of, Furmins. They did a little bit of port work for Activision, which I'm sure was lucrative, and all the rest. But even as things ebbed, so I would say Dead Nation is more of an ebb. I love that game, but that game had, as you guys might remember, a catastrophic rollout with it not working with online and all the rest. Then Resogun came, and that was awesome. Then they made Alien Nation, which no one really cared about. Then they made Nex Machina, which was their independent game. And then they actually went back to Sony again and made Matterfall. So Sony has always been willing to work with them. And so this seems to make sense. And I think a lot of people are now wondering what's next. So before we get into any of that, Michael Centeno wrote into us on Patreon. He says, "Hey, CC and Big D, with PlayStation officially buying Housemarque and presumably Bluepoint, we'll talk about that in a little while. I was wondering, when a company is being purchased, how do they determine the value of the company? Is it solely on revenue or also based on the value of the IP that they own? Thanks and keep up the good work." This is what I think keeps the value of Housemarque down, is that they don't really own anything. So I think you're just buying the talent, you're buying the organization and all of the rest. It's not the same as buying Insomniac, which does own, I mean, you might not care about these things, but they do own some IP. They do own Sunset Overdrive and Fuse and others that might have some intrinsic value. I'm sure owning Sunset Overdrive is in itself worth millions of dollars. So that's a little bit of a different, I'm no intent in wearing the shirt for that reason. I just picked it out of the top of the pile. So the value, I think, is just determined based on, all of these different things. And then you have to kind of find, like, Bethesda's deal was incredibly complicated compared to a deal like Housemarque, which I'm sure is much more straightforward. But Brian Borlaug wrote in about something else, and he says, "Hey boys, with Sony's acquisition of Housemarque, what does this mean for the studio's future titles? I personally love a Resogun 2, but does the apparent success of Returnal solidify their game's directions moving forward? Could they beef up to work on multiple projects at once? I've enjoyed every game they've released, so regardless of what they do, I'd be happy as a pig in shit. Thanks for the great content and continued success of your brand, guys." Thank you for writing in. Chris, I'm curious what you think should be Housemarque's next move. In the GQ article, it's actually really quite nice. Like Alari Kutanen talks about how the studio is just gone right now. Like they're just all on vacation and they don't even know what they're going to do next. And like this news is even rolling out to them while like they're all not together. He also notes, as I talked about in my write-up here, that they're not going to be going backwards anymore. And you might remember that he wrote a blog post like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's called "Arcade Gaming is Dead" or something like that. So unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get these games. But wouldn't it be nice, Chris, is if they incubated a AAA game and then also just allowed a small team to make some of the cool stuff that they used to make too?
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And I think that would be probably the best thing. But I mean, we know that's probably not likely going to happen. I just think, as somebody, like, let's say you're a developer and you're like, I really like Housemarque's games. I want to make games like that. And then you go to Housemarque and then they're making Returnal and you're like, oh, well, all right, well, there's some identity here. I get where the design would evolve into this. So it's like, all right, it's not so bad. But surely there are people at that studio who love making those types of, Resogun and Super Stardust. And surely there are a lot of people at that studio that enjoy making that kind of game. So while they seem pretty adamant that they're not willing to go backwards, I wouldn't be surprised if enough people at that studio maybe would want to, like, hey, well, we're a first party now. Maybe we could get some resources to kind of throw something together super cheap on the side that, like, maybe could rake in an extra bit of money. Maybe could even just be like a really sleeper hit on the indie side, or like, the indie side as a genre,
right,
to kind of bolster, or kind of like, especially like with the talk of the way that you would assume that Sony's looking at Insomniac as kind of like a model, right? You would assume that Insomniac is kind of looked at as like, ooh, they can get a lot of things out really quickly because they managed to delegate responsibilities between teams really effectively. And if they can boost Housemarque's numbers as far as like, and they can boost Housemarque's staff enough that they could put out a AAA and an indie every so often, that would be pretty good for Sony, I think. And I think it would be good for Housemarque because, again, I would be shocked if there are a lot of Housemarque employees that didn't also want to continue doing Resogun and stuff like that.
Definitely. I think you hit on a very interesting point too, which is, again, keeping your company happy, the culture positive. And I think a lot of the creativity that you see in Returnal came from their work in other games. It's very weird because I'm a big Housemarque stan, as I know my longtime listeners know. I'm just been up the studio's ass forever. But when you play Returnal, you can tell it's their game. Like, it's when you really sit and look at it and see even the way things come at you and the way it is structure arcadey, like just the way things are shot, and there's rule sets that are predictable. And I'm like, this is a Housemarque game. So it would be interesting, Dustin, to allow them to do that so that they can continue to flex, find the creative ideas that they then blow up into something bigger. But I think what we can definitely categorically say now is that Sony is very pleased with Returnal and with their output generally, and feel like now is the time to lock these guys down. And they're being locked down, by the way, in a very similar way to Insomniac being locked down when they tried to go do something else and it just didn't work out very well. And so they came back home.
Right. I feel like what I want from them is to do a game, maybe, I don't want to say like Returnal, but I want them to do a game that has arcade feeling combat like Returnal, but like how you said in the past, Colin, not roguelike. Like, imagine if Returnal, instead of the repeat, which I get it's the core of the game and the stories, so just ignore that for a minute, but like if it had lives or whatever or something like that and continues, people would have beat that game instantly, right? So a lot of the content is stretched out due to the nature of the game. Now with, Sony was funding, but now that they're a fully owned studio, maybe they can take some of that combat formula and apply it to a game that can be full length without having to repeat content over and over to give it that length. That's what I would love to see. Cause I don't think they're going to go back as much as Resogun 2 would be awesome.
Super Resogun.
I'm like, I'm kind of like Resogun's perfect as it is to me.
It
like,
is,
what are you going to do for Resogun 2? So
it's a wonderful game.
I think that Sony is looking at, and they've said this, they want to buy culture at studios, the teams that mesh with how they work. Herman Hulst talked about their technical capabilities. And so I think that the main thing that they saw or have continued to see in them is that the potential that they can make huge games. They want to buy studios that can make blockbusters, and Returnal might not quite have been it, but maybe they have that in them in the future.
Yeah, I think Returnal clearly hasn't sold very well. And I think Sony going in and saying, you know what? Well, the game, I think they said basically the game is made, I'm sure made its money back. I don't think it was very expensive to make, but that's still being like, yeah, we still want you anyway. We still want to put a ring on it anyway, because we're so pleased with what you've done with us and for us. And so I think they're a very welcome fit. And I think they're in this space in between where Sony still does have like this weird quote unquote indie studio in Pixel Opus, right? And Housemarque is kind of like above that, but not quite where the rest of the studio's headcounts are for the most part. They're still pretty small. What I want to see is if they're going to scale up. They're almost 100, and that's way bigger than the team that made Resogun. So they're going to need more, and they're going to get more. I want to talk a little bit about some of the contradictions in this deal, but I want to talk about it later when we introduce some new data and some new news to this as well. But in the meantime, I want to congratulate Housemarque for this. This is awesome. I think that they are very welcome and make a lot of sense. And to Chris's point, they've already kind of been here anyway. Number 2, the first-party acquisitions don't stop there, though this one is certainly less exciting. PlayStation has officially acquired Dutch team Nixxes, making them Sony's second first-party team in the Netherlands after Guerrilla. Now, Nixxes isn't a developer per se. They're a port house and support team that, since their founding in the late 90s, has never made their own game. Instead, they've been attached at the hip, first to Eidos and later to Square Enix, porting their games to other platforms. They have experience on consoles dating back to their first project, a Dreamcast port of Crystal Dynamics' Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which launched in 2000. They also brought games to GameCube, the original Xbox, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. But they made their name in the PC port space, and following Square Enix's acquisition of Eidos, worked on bringing some of that publisher's biggest internal Western-developed products to PC. This includes 2011's Deus Ex Human Revolution, 2012's Hitman Absolution, 2013's Tomb Raider, 2014's Thief, 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider, 2016's Deus Ex Mankind Divided, 2018 Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and 2020's Avengers. In a press release announcing the news, Sony confirms that Nixxes is joining the already existing technology, creative, and services group within PlayStation Studios. Herman Hulst, head of the PlayStation Studios, said in part, quote, "They have a passion for improving games, delivering the best possible experiences for gamers. Nixxes will be a strong asset for everyone across PlayStation Studios, helping our team focus on their most important goal, which is to create unique PlayStation content at the best possible quality," end quote. Jurgen Katzmann, the Nixxes founder, said in part, quote, "We can't wait to get to work and are so excited to bring our technical and development expertise to an IP powerhouse like PlayStation Studios. We're looking forward to working with some of the most talented teams in the industry to deliver the highest quality gameplay experiences for PlayStation fans," end quote. While it's possible they could have also been purchased to help port forward stranded PlayStation games on old platforms to, say, PS5, they did port 2013's Tomb Raider and 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider to PS3 and Xbox 360, respectively. This deal is almost certainly PC-focused. They released nothing on last-gen hardware and have no known plans on current-gen hardware either. So assume this purchase circulates around bringing internal first-party games to PC with maybe some support work and other ports mingling in there. Chris, what did you make of this one? This one actually just broke this morning and wasn't even announced in any official way. There's press releases, and it was picked up by websites, but there's no PlayStation blog post, and it was something that Herman Hulse basically just tweeted out. This is a studio acquisition that a lot of people aren't really going to understand. I'll get into what I think it means. But what do you make of this kind of silent post-Housemarque, probably Bluepoint, which we'll talk about in a minute announcement, this almost like thing that's maybe sandwiched in two big things?
Yeah, I mean, I could see why they didn't, like, it is not a sexy story. You know, it's like, here's a port studio. It's not even a glamorous kind of port studio like Bluepoint would be, where it's like, hey, here, because Bluepoint arguably ports things as well, but it's obviously with a lot of flair and finesse and like, hey, here's a proper remake. Here's Demon's Souls looking like fucking photorealistic all of a sudden. And it's like, oh shit. You know, there's definitely like a difference in, also just the fact that I've never heard of these people, like, ever in my life. Like, Nixxes, not once have I seen them come up in any conversation of any kind. So I could see why this is maybe like a subtler kind of announcement, but I do think it's wise that they have a studio centered around PC ports, especially as that seems to be more and more likely part of their plan going forward, as far as how they plan to get their IP kind of out beyond just PlayStation. And it helps kind of free up the studios that they do have to kind of work on shit that's new and important and less retroactive. So I think this makes a ton of sense, even if it's not, the most exciting thing.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Dustin, I was thinking about this in sort of like Sony went out and found them an almost Saber Interactive style, much smaller than Saber Interactive, but a team that just does the grunt, glamorous, necessary work of proliferating games across platforms and bringing tools across. And I was actually, so they're Dutch. I was reading, they have a Dutch Wikipedia page, which I translated in Chrome. And so I don't know how accurate it was, and I couldn't get much further into the citations when I was getting in like a real Dutch black hole. But I feel like I know that it says in that Wikipedia that the founder of the studio, this guy Jurgen Katzmann, has explicitly said that his studio has no interest in making their own games and like has no interest in doing anything but the glamorous stuff. So what did you make of this surprise acquisition?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's very exciting, and we've experienced some resistance to the fact that we've been positive about Sony games on PC. People need to give it up. And here's the thing is that I don't know how we can be more clear about this, but I'm going to make it crystal clear right now. I do not think that Sony, outside of the multiplayer focus, I think when they start releasing some of these multiplayer games that we hear rumored about, those will come on PC day and date. And it has to, for the health of, they want those games to be esports, they need to come out on PC day and date. I would be so incredibly shocked if we'll see like a God of War game come to PC at the same day as PC, or it can't come to PC the same day as PlayStation 5. I do not see that happening. This is why we keep saying this, but there's still people that don't understand. It's like, this is good for the games that you like. If you are a PlayStation fanboy, I'm trying to speak to you and tell you this is good. These PC games or these PS5 games that are delayed and then eventually come to PC is good for PlayStation fanboys and for PlayStation hardware, because it gets more and more people interested in the ecosystem. And then maybe they don't want to wait 2 years to play that game, and they'll buy a PS5 or whatever. Great. That's what the fanboys want. It's what Sony wants. Whatever. We don't care because we're just, we like Sony, but we're obviously very critical of them and stuff. But it's a great thing, and I'm glad to see Sony. They had a few hiccups at the launch of Horizon Zero Dawn, so to see them be like, okay, this is working out. We want it to be up to our quality standard, though. So we're going to bring someone in who's the pro at this and have them do it right. And I think that is fantastic news.
Yeah. I don't know, or we don't really know the intent. A lot of the wording in the press release is vague about what they're planning on doing with them. It's clear, though, that they want to deploy them on existing IP and all of the rest. I agree with you that people need to let go or dissuade themselves of this notion that PC gaming is bad for PlayStation. I think it's necessary to embrace it in order to proliferate and sustain PlayStation in the long term. And we've seen that with second party releases. I think Predator Hunting Ground came to PS4 and PC at the same time. It's not necessarily unprecedented. So it would be cool to kind of see a unison using these guys as a bridge. And I'll also remind you, an important piece of data that's gone largely unreported is in Sony's financials. They note that Horizon Zero Dawn on PC made a 250% return on investment. So when you see that kind of number and you realize, well, we don't need to use Guerrilla to do this. They should just be making games. And then we have these guys that can that are like programmed to do this. They don't, it's not an experiment for them. So I think Sony we talked about how like they were experimenting, right? Bend and all these others, but I think their experiment kind of led them to believe, okay, the experiment is over. We probably should just allocate these resources to a studio that knows what they're doing with them. And it's exciting to think about it. But Chris, I wanted to kick this back over to you with this question from Connor Bright. He says, hey, CDC, with Nixxes software joining the PlayStation Studios umbrella, do you think they would be able to remaster some PlayStation games that are stranded on older consoles, such as Infamous? Or are they just going to be porting games to PC? Keep up the hard work, boys, and Dustin, keep fighting the good fight against the Kingdom Hearts haters. He will. So, Chris, I'm curious. They have some sort of provenance in the console space. They worked a little bit on PS3, a little bit on Xbox 360. We know Dreamcast back in the day, whatever. I'm wondering if you think that this could have anything to do with them bringing these old games forward. I don't know that that's necessarily in their wheelhouse, but perhaps these guys have such technical skill and know-how. I was talking about it on Moore's Law is Dead's podcast about Sony we were talking about like Sony just seeming to not necessarily have the know-how to do some things and do them efficiently. And one of the things is emulating the cell processor and getting these games off of PlayStation 3 specifically. Do you think maybe that's part of it too?
It could be. I just don't know if this is. I don't know if this studio is necessarily being acquired with the notion of reaching that far back into the past. I do think this is more of a kind of a modern thing. I do think they're looking at like, hey, here's the latest build of whatever the most recent, like, hey, here's God of War or whatever. Do this, and then like. I really do think that's going to be their focus. I don't think this studio is big enough really to handle like, hey, here's 8 different ports and also like, hey, here's Infamous again, and here's a bunch of PS3 things that, by the way, very few people have been able to figure out. The PS3 is like super hard to emulate, like even for people who are doing it for free out of the passion of their own, like just purely for their own passion projects, trying to get things working. So I don't know if even a studio like this with this kind of, skill set would necessarily just be able to kind of like be able to, hey, here's Resistance, hey, here's Infamous, like out of the blue like that, because they're just so talented. I do think it's a way bigger battle than just this studio can handle, especially if they're going to be on, PC porting duty, like, which seems to be their like, they did specialize in console stuff, but we know that the team, like 2007 Bungie is not 2021 Bungie, right. And like I doubt 2005 Nixxes is 2021 Nixxes. So there's a different skill set, there's a different focus. I don't know if I wouldn't hold my breath for Infamous or Resistance on PS5 at the hands of these guys specifically. Although I do understand why people would be hopeful, given that these seem to be the only people in any way tailor-made for that kind of project. I just don't see that being their priority at all.
Yeah, I would assume that bringing new games to PC would be, that's a salient point, much more valuable to Sony. And that's why I brought up in my write-up that they have console experience, but they did nothing on PS4, nothing on Xbox One, no known plans of PS5 or Xbox Series X. So it's been a while. Dustin, what do you think? Do you think it's wishful thinking that we might see them go back into the past, or do you think what Chris is saying is true, that they're really being brought on to just take advantage of this PC market?
I feel like it makes more sense to see them do the PC stuff. I mean, we're looking at like, what, a decade of them doing exclusive PC stuff. And I just don't know. We've seen other companies do that already. Like Bluepoint brought PS3 games over, and so have many other. I mean, outside of PlayStation first party and stuff, bring games over. So I don't know if you need a studio with that kind of specialized expertise to do that. And this is another situation where just like follow the numbers, follow the money. PlayStation is seeing huge returns on PC release. They buy a studio that's been porting games to PC for the last decade. I mean, it seems obvious, not for sure, but obvious.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll see what their first project is. Could be in the works. My one conspiracy about this, it's not really a bad thing, but Sony kind of reiterating time and time again, we work with teams who we know, indicates that maybe they've been working with them already on some silent work that hasn't been credited, which happens all the time. And of course, maybe some other thing came up, and they, during the time that this was going on, said, we need this service. I think that's what Embracer did with Saber Interactive. I think people are just publishers are realizing they just need this service. All right. So number 3 adds even more to this. And this is when we can really start to dissect everything that's happened. It also appears that PlayStation purchased another longtime partner, Texas's Bluepoint Games, though as of the time we're recording this, no official word has been given by either party. The reason this is almost certainly the case, however, is because of a seemingly huge error by PlayStation's Japanese social media team. In promoting the story about Housemarque's acquisition, the wrong image was used. It showed the PlayStation Studios logo next to Bluepoint's with the text, "Welcome to the family," in all capital letters. It's otherwise identical to the proper image that was used everywhere else featuring Housemarque's logo, except for one other glaring issue. The Bluepoint image centrally shows Demon's Souls Remake, while the Housemarque image shows Returnal. In other words, it's not some image someone made by accident. This announcement is coming soon, and when it happens officially, we'll put a ring on it and go into official details on the histories of the studio and Sony's collaborations. While we wait, however, such a tiny deluge of acquisitions does seem to raise questions of Sony perhaps making moves in light of rival Microsoft's recent buys, although this deal with Housemarque apparently began materializing, as we said earlier, in 2020. When publication GQ asked Herman Holst if Sony sees this as an arms race, he said in part, quote, "Not at all. We're very selective about the developers we bring in. Our last new acquisition was Insomniac in 2019, which was worked out very well. I'm always looking for people that have a similar set of values, similar creative ambitions, and work very well with our team that we can further invest in and help grow as creators. It's not like we're going around and just making random acquisitions. They're very, very targeted acquisitions of teams that we know well," end quote. So beyond Housemarque, Nixxes, and Bluepoint, it may be best to temper expectations. Dominic Woodward wrote in and said, "Shaggers, what are your thoughts on the leaked Bluepoint PlayStation image? As you've said plenty of times, it makes sense, but seems very interesting if they're holding that announcement back." So the idea that this is an error is a strange one, because you would have to imagine that someone at Sony would have been instructed to make an image in which they made the wrong image, and then like with the wrong studio, the wrong name, then it got uploaded wrong, it got through all these things, then it got posted. So this obviously clearly happened. So we're waiting on official confirmation, but what do you think? Do you think it's real? And what do you think of the acquisition if it is?
Yeah, no, I think it's totally real, and I think it makes total sense. Like, this is another thing like Housemarque, where it's just like they've been working so in tandem with Sony for so long that just like, you might as well just make it official at this point. I do think it would be really wise of them to have a studio like Bluepoint. We've been singing these praises for a long time, but like Bluepoint is just really, really exceptional at remastering shit. Like, they're just really, really good. And especially in an era that is, I don't want to say nostalgia dependent, but like, you know, people really like old things. It's not an unwise investment to have a studio that is really good at taking old things and sprucing them up and making them fucking gorgeous. You know, like it just makes a ton of sense. And I could kind of see why it took them a while to get him, because like maybe that this wasn't necessarily always the case. You know, I feel like overall lately in recent years, the kind of nostalgia play is a lot more valuable now than it was in like 2014 or like 2015 or something like that. So it makes sense to get them now. It makes sense to kind of compete a little bit with Microsoft in a way that's not like scatterbrained and kind of like just acquiring studios for the sake of acquiring them, but acquiring studios that just make sense for the brand and makes sense for the studio culture. I think this is a great get. I'm really excited as to what this could mean for future Bluepoint projects.
Me too. We'll talk about that in a moment because we have questions about that, and I'm interested to see what you guys think they might be doing as a first party. Dustin, I wanted to kick this over to you too, just to kind of inquire if you think it's, you know, so it should be reiterated. It's a real image. It came from Japan, Japanese, the Japanese PlayStation Twitter account. So we know that it's real, but it's obviously an accident. So I assume you think it's going to be announced soon. And we should know by the time this episode is being recorded anyway, it just hasn't been confirmed. So we'll wait to like really get deep into the woods of who Bluepoint is more and more. But what do you make of this?
Yeah, it's definitely happening. There's no mistake there. You pointed out when you read the news item that it was cut more than just the logo. They like specifically spliced in Demon Souls. So I guess the question is when of the timing. And I don't have a lot to add other than from what Chris said. It's just that it's already a great partnership. They've done a lot of great stuff. Demon Souls was amazing. And there's just so many IP that they could do and work on, and it goes beyond just doing remakes, but also doing fantastic remasters like the Uncharted collection as well.
Yeah, they've done great work. Now they've worked for Microsoft and they've worked for Konami, so they've worked outside of these ecosystems as well, or outside of this ecosystem. But I agree. I think it's real. It's obvious that this is going to happen. And by the way, I told you guys that Sony would most likely buy Housemarque and most likely buy Bluepoint. Those were definitely the two I repeated over and over and over again. And it's because of these close relationships that exist. But people are curious about what Bluepoint might do. And so we can get into that in earnest here. John Mark Moon wrote in and said, "Hey, gents, first I want to say thank you for the awesome content." Thank you. With PlayStation Japan posting the wrong image of the acquisition of Housemarque, the purchase of Bluepoint has to be authentic, right? If it is true, what do you want their next project to be? Thanks, and keep making every day great. So this is when we're going to really have to get into the nitty gritty of what the purpose of this team is. Chris, I wonder what you think Sony's intent with Bluepoint is, because this, I think, is somewhere actually in between the Housemarque and Nixxes announcements in terms of Bluepoint really doesn't make games. They did make one original game. People might remember it was the I think it was a PS3 launch game, which was Blast Factor. I don't know if you guys remember that game. That was like their very first game, and ever since then they've done nothing but port work and remakes. So certainly they're being brought in with intent, right?
Mm-hmm. I would imagine man, my soul just wants Metal Gear remake, and wants Bluepoint to do it however they can manage to do that. I know there's a licensing thing there, but man, that would be amazing for me. Like I want that, and I'm gonna put it out in the universe because I have a pretty good track record of that. But outside of that, I just I do find it interesting that they got Nixxes and this studio, because and Bluepoint, because they almost specialize in the same field but like different aspects of it. So like I wonder if maybe there is some conjoined effort here in a way to kind of bring some of these Bluepoint remasters over to PC in some way. Like, is Shadow of the Colossus on PC?
No.
It's kind of shocking. It's actually surprising that it's not. I feel like that would be an obvious one. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they could possibly be up to. Demon Souls was already kind of like bizarre. Like, I didn't really anticipate that. So it seems like it's kind of up in the air for now, especially because they just went, like they're not going to have anything ready for a while. But my hope is Metal Gear.
Yeah, they're about 100 people strong, as I know, right now. And they were, if you're a PlayStation 3 gamer, you'll remember that when those collections started coming out, it was really Sly Cooper collection that came first, and that was done by Sanzaru. But then the God of War collection and the Team Eco collection were both from Bluepoint. Those came out in 2009 and 2011. 2011 was also the MGS collection that came to PS3 and Xbox 360 and Vita on behalf of Konami. They also did the PS All-Stars port. Oh, there it is. So
there it is.
Yeah, that's the Vita version of Metal Gear Solid, which I'm going to be playing MGS 2 again for the first time in a while for Knockback. And then, of course, like we said, they really started getting into the remastering space. 2015, they did the Nathan Drake collection, which is very well regarded. They also ported the original Gravity Rush that year to PS4, which is a pretty rare game, I think. Then they did the remake of 2018 Shadow of the Colossus, which is very well regarded. And then Demon Souls, like Chris said, is extremely well regarded. So my assumption, Dustin, is that they're being brought on to continue making things new again. The only question is, like, what could it be? And Metal Gear Solid is so tantalizing and fun, and so is the idea of a Castlevania game or something. But when we're thinking about, per our earlier conversation with Nixxes about leaving the PS3 games alone and all of this, well, this is where I think Bluepoint comes in. And this is where, like, a Infamous remake or a Resistance remake or a Killzone remake or something like that has to be in the cards. You would assume something like that, right, Dustin? Would you think that maybe that's the intent? Because Demon Souls and Shadow of the Colossus are not new games. So they remade them, right, back from that generation.
Yeah. I personally think that, I don't know, I'm trying to tell if this is a think or a want. I feel like, there's so many rumors around Bloodborne right now that they don't need to remake Bloodborne. All they need to do, they're familiar with From Software's code, maybe an older version of their code, but all they need to do is go into the engine, clean up maybe some of the assets, some of the textures, make it run at 60 FPS, bump up the resolution, and kind of the same thing that they did for the Nathan Drake collection from PS3 to PS4, but this with Bloodborne from PS4 to PS5. Clearly, there's something going on with Bloodborne with all these rumors. Maybe not, but I feel like that's the move, and that would be a nice in-between project for them. But again, the other reoccurring rumor is this Metal Gear Solid remake that Chris mentioned, and maybe that is the move. That would be so cool, man. I would be like so excited. But the last thing I would say is just the thought of some older, Sony first party stuff. Resistance would be definitely very cool. Something like that. I got to wonder if maybe the way that they can kind of, there's always discussion about should Bluepoint be able to make their own game at some point. I don't know if they're interested in that, but what if they could take Resistance and remake it and do it kind of in a new way? That would be kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
But the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. I just think that there are a trilogy of games, or a trio of games, you should say, from that era that just are kind of gone now. Infamous, Killzone, and Resistance. So it would be cool to see any of them revisited, but nonetheless, we'll congratulate them, I guess, more officially when it's properly announced, but that's all but clear that it's happening now. Turd Ferguson, our old friend, wrote into us and said, "Hey guys, in regards to the acquisitions of Bluepoint and Housemarque, I'm curious what the net gain for Sony is. Those two studios already make games exclusively for PlayStation. As Colin always says, why buy the cow when you can just get the milk? I don't see how these two acquisitions move the needle for most people. Nintendo and Microsoft aren't affected by this, and the only thing that changes on PlayStation's side is that these two studios go from being second-party studios to first-party studios. There's no net increase when it comes from their output of exclusives. This is an interesting point. I don't know if it's a good point, but it's an interesting point in the sense that I've been thinking about this too. What I've been thinking about specifically is how everyone just hook, line, and sinker, not everyone, but a lot of people take this Sony marketing bullshit about how there is no difference between first party and second party games. Is that right, everyone? That there's no difference? Because that's so strange that there's no difference between a first party game and a second party game. It seems like the 2 second party exclusives just had their studios purchased and made into first party studios. So clearly when Hermen Hulst says there's no difference, that's a load of shit. And that should also be called out in this, I think, deluge of positivity that we're heaping on Sony right now, which is great. I mean, I think these are, I've been saying this for years that they should buy these teams. So this all comes to fruition and makes a lot of sense. But God, can we, Dustin, can we just acknowledge that there is a difference and that when you say bullshit like that in comments or in tweets or whatever, you just sound dumb? Because of course there is a fucking difference between you owning the team and you merely owning and funding an IP. And if there was no difference, then Turd Ferguson is certainly right in the sense that why would Sony even be interested in buying Housemarque or Bluepoint? The only answers that I can think of in retort to that is that they were being courted to do other projects by others, which maybe is true. But even then, Sony could just be like, oh, we'll just give you more money for your project. Oh, Housemarque, you've already made like 17 games for us. There's no difference, though. There's no difference. So, Dustin, does that resonate with you? When this happened, I'm like, oh, what a load of horse shit that was.
Right. Well, and I think that maybe, I'm not saying that he's right, but Hermen, I think, was just trying to, in a bad way, say like, oh no, our first and second party content is just as good. You know, the second party stuff that we hire is this of the same. They're part of the family. When you see Returnal, which at the time second party, we're treating it as a first party. I don't think he explained that very well, but I'm guessing that's kind of the point that he was trying to say. But that is kind of interesting. What Turd brings up here is that's like, you know, why buy them? But I think that clearly, yeah, it's different. When someone's second party, they have to negotiate terms. Like what are you going to provide for us? What's the time frame? Can we do it within this budget? And totally different contractual world when you're dealing with second party. And it's one of those things that it's like, if you're, you know, in sync and doing the same, you know, the culture's good, and why continue to deal with any kind of red tape or legal stuff and just seal the deal?
Yeah. Well, Chris, did this strike you at all as strange, just based on Hermen Hulst's kind of insistence that, and talking, by the way, specifically about Demon Souls and specifically about Returnal in these contexts, and then they just go and buy the studios? Like, to me, that was just, that kind of belied a deeper bullshit level for me than I think people get. Like, everyone really likes Hermen, and I like Hermen too. He's always been really nice to me in person. He's a gamer. He understands things, but I don't know how deep his media training goes, and he's kind of getting himself into some of these little quibbles.
I get the issue being taken with it, but at the same time, I do think it was meant in the way that Dustin kind of was talking about it, where it's like, yes, Spider-Man at the time, right, was not a first party, right? So like, and that game was fucking exceptional, like amazing, and I think that's really what he means. Just like the quality of the things that we seek out externally are just as high as the stuff that we produce internally, and I think that's, he didn't say it in a good way. But I think that's what he meant. So like, it didn't bother me. But I will say the notion of this is it's kind of bizarre that the only reason to acquire is to, the only value in an acquisition is to take something from something else.
Yes.
I think that's a little, I don't know. I think that's a little weird. I don't necessarily think of things that way. Like when I get if I get like a really unique car, it's not necessarily because I want to take it away from other people. It's just because like, hey, maybe I just want this unique car for me, you know, and I find value in that. And that's cool for me that I have it. And I think, you know, in this situation, you know, they're already so close that, yeah, you're not taking anything away from anybody, but should that be the goal of an acquisition. I get that you maybe want to lock these studios down so they don't like meander a little bit, but Ratchet and Clank wasn't going to come out for Xbox, you know? That's not a thing that was ever going to happen. So like, I don't know. I just find this, the notion of it's only good if you're taking a little bizarre. I think that's a little confusing. I don't necessarily jive with that, but I do think it's a little funny that that's a quote of his of, there is no difference, because obviously there is some difference, even if it's not huge, and even if it's not like, particularly noticeable. Surely there's like the convenience of working within your own first party ecosystem is a lot stronger and probably a lot more cohesive and more facilitative to like productive work than it is dealing with like red tape and having to negotiate and like, there's this partner who's external also wants to handle the PC port of this, and it's like, fuck, never mind, fuck it, let's just buy you, just make it super simple. I think it's a simplification process. I really think that's all it is.
I think that's true. What do you think, Dustin, about that?
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a weird. I think Chris summed it up pretty well, honestly. Yeah, we'll go with. I think Chris had it.
Well, I think we should prognosticate from here with Sean Preston, who says, "Hey, Chris, Colin, and Chris, and Dustin. Herman Holst's quote regarding studio acquisitions specifically mentioned that they are interested in teams we know well. That verbiage helps us narrow down the speculation when it comes to future acquisitions. After Housemarque and presumably Bluepoint, are there other studios that Sony knows very well? Thanks for all that you do, and remember to give that chicken a break once in a while." So I honestly only think of one studio that's left, and it's From. I mean, I think like that's the only team that that I really think Sony knows like that they don't own. I think they knew Supermassive like that. I don't know that Supermassive's not available. Like that, they have an 8-game contract with another publisher. Why would Sony want anything to do with that? So they're done. So Quantic Dream was a possibility, and that went really south as well. That actually really went south with Beyond Two Souls. I just think that they signed a 3-game deal with them. So that's done. So From Software is the only one left when you think about, Ready at Dawn's gone, right? They're with Facebook now. So you just kind of pick off all these traditional second parties, and that's all that's left.
From Software, that's an interesting. I don't know if they want to be bought. I
don't think so either. I'm just saying that's the only one that makes any sense. I don't think they want to be bought either. I should be clear about that. I don't think they have any interest in being bought. So
they already. It's interesting because they shopped themselves around for Sekiro. They went over to Activision, which was kind of a surprising option, and now they're back with Bandai Namco. So clearly there's something in that partnership that they wanted to go back to. But as far as other options, I think, Colin, you've brought up a good point in the past about how there's just not a lot of first-party teams, or not first-party, a lot of independent teams out there that are kind of left. We've kind of seen the consolidation of the industry. I mean, we've brought up Remedy, but safe to say, I think, are they in the news as well?
Yeah, they're obviously in the news. We'll talk about them in a little while.
Yeah,
they're off the market, I would assume. And IO is in this field. We also have to understand that Microsoft is apparently kind of probing around as well. I think a lot of people read Herman Holst's quote about we don't just buy any team as kind of a shot against them for that. But I agree with the interpretation that we can narrow down their potential targets if he's really being serious, and there's just not that many of them. So Chris, is any come to mind for you? Because I agree. I don't think From's available. I don't think that they want to be purchased. I'm just saying, when you think about PS4's second party games, right? You think about Ready at Dawn, their studios, Supermassive, Quantic Dream, right? Like a few others, like Ilphonic, which maybe will be available. I mean, that could be one that they want. They have a huge, by the way, Sony connection and Gio Corsi running that studio. So that could be a connection for them too. But does anything come to mind for you, Chris?
No, I think that's why they've put a distinct effort into putting together these kind of like haphazard studios, like with Haven and what's the other one?
Oh, it's the Firewalk and there's
if only there was a game to attach to them so I could remember them easier. I think that's the reason why you're seeing those studios kind of prop up, is because it's like, I think they're looking around, and yeah, they might find like an indie here and an indie there, or like maybe like something that's like, that could fulfill some niche, as far as like studios that are like on the market and available for purchase. But I think their options, if that is true, are very, very low and very slim. And there's no way From Software is ever going to sell, at least not for a while. I don't think. Like they're on top of the world. Everybody's screaming about Elden Ring. And we only got a single trailer for it, so they got nothing to worry about. They're not very good. No, yeah, it looks good. It looks fine. Like it looks like more of what they make, which is exactly what people want. So it's like, hey man, they got their wheelhouse and they're doing fucking perfectly fine. So I would imagine that it's more likely that you're going to start seeing kind of new studios prop up. Like, hey, here's Haven, here's whatever the hell that Firewalk, the one with that starts with a D that I don't remember.
Disruptor or something. Yeah, I don't know. Who cares?
There you go. Like, doesn't inspire confidence, but I think that's the route that they're going. In the absence of many studios left that Sony, quote, knows well.
I think the only two entities that people, or I guess I should say three entity, and I say entities because they're now bigger than just developers, that I think people throw into the mix in probably the order of size, is Konami. I know people really want this to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I just think Konami is too stingy to let go of their IP. We're going to talk about Silent Hill in a minute. I think they just are happy finding various partners. So I don't think they're for sale. Number two, people bring up Sumo Digital. We were just talking about Sackboy, A Big Adventure. Now, Sumo Digital is just too big. I mean, when Sumo Digital is its own entity now, that is a company that is very familiar with Sony and has worked with Sony for a long time on really big products. But I don't know that they're what Sony wants. That would be Sony's very first ever publisher acquisition, basically, because Sumo Digital just has a lot of different things going on now. And then the third one, obviously, is the big one, which is Square Enix. I mean, people just keep throwing around this idea that Sony is going to buy Square Enix, but that's not going to happen. Sony can't afford Square Enix. Square Enix would be stupid to sell to Sony, and I certainly don't want that to happen. Like, I don't want, because I do like that these, Chris was saying it earlier, and someone had written into us about it as well. It's like, these don't feel punitive, like Bethesda felt to a lot of people, because you weren't playing any Bluepoint games on Xbox anyway. You weren't playing any Housemarque games on Xbox or Nintendo, so it doesn't matter. So I think that people kind of embrace these acquisitions too, because they just don't take away from others. And I feel like in any of those acquisitions, someone would lose, and I don't want that for other groups. Dustin?
Colin, real quick, what do you think about something I was just popped in my mind here is that a lot of people are in the mindset of Xbox buying Bethesda. They're thinking about Sony buying publishers in a way. We bring up Square Enix, but I feel like Xbox's move was, sure, that there's a lot of talent that they bought, a lot of studios, but like a lot of that purchase was IP.
Definitely.
Because Xbox, sure, they've got Halo, they got Gears, they got the stuff they've had for years, but they're real light on IP in comparison to Sony. And so Sony doesn't need to go out and buy a publisher with a bunch of IP. That's just not, they already have really strong and iconic brands and characters. They need to buy teams that can bring those to the surface again, like Bluepoint, like the PC studio that I already forgot the name. Nixxes. It's a weird name. Nixxes.
Well, they're Dutch, so who knows what it even, who even knows if we're saying it right.
But yeah, they don't need, you're exactly right. Like, they don't really need, they have so many IP that they have literally great IP that it's just stranded on like elderly hardware that they're not even doing anything with. It's ridiculous. Like, dude, I'm screaming. Just someone put a fucking Resistance out. God Christ.
Yeah, it would be a Resistance trilogy would just really hit the spot.
It is, by the way, astounding that like that would have been one of my first things. Like I would have, honestly, I would have been like, hey, let's put the Resistance trilogy on PC. I would have did that before Halo got that. You know? Like, that would have been, I think that would have been smart. It's like, hey, here's Resistance. It's been out for a while. It's a beloved PlayStation IP. It's not really popping anymore. Insomniac's doing their own thing. Spider-Man, Insomnia, and Ratchet and all that. Put this on PC. Get a big splash for that. Now they kind of lost that again, to the same game that they lost it to the first time. It's kind of, it's kind of a shame. I just want that series to come back.
I do too, dude. I mean, I do too. Above my bed is a Resistance Retribution poster, like an awesome Retribution. So it's like I love Resistance. I've always, and my longtime fans know that that's a friend. I actually had to recuse myself from reviewing them because I used to talk those games up so much when I was at IGN. And it's amazing that if you don't count Burning Skies, which no one does on Vita, the last Resistance game came out almost 10 years ago. It would be October and November of 2011, I think.
Wow.
So it's been a long time. All right. Well, so just again, congratulations to Housemarque. Congratulations to Nixxes. Congratulations to Bluepoint, although we'll go into you when you are officially engaged. But we have more first-party news to get into. This was a rumor. Now we have complete confirmation. Number 4, Ghost of Tsushima is natively coming to PlayStation 5, and it'll come packing a new expansion to boot, confirming recent rumors and speculation not only about a so-called director's cut leaked by the ESRB, but also the expansion itself. So here's the deal. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on August 20th. Obviously, the PS5 version will come toting new features like full use of the DualSense, dynamic 4K resolution at 60 frames, and most importantly, the Iki Island expansion. This expansion allows Jin to explore a new island with a new story, quests, and more, and it'll come packing its own trophies. Better yet, if you own the game on PS4, you can upgrade to the Director's Cut for $20, unlocking new features and the new content. Now, here's where things get a little complicated. You can then pay an extra $10 to bring it all to PS5 in the future. So you have some options. Ghost of Tsushima launched on PlayStation 4 in 2020 and was PS4's exclusive swan song from Sony-owned developer Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch, purchased by Sony more than a decade ago, was once known for its Sly Cooper and infamous franchise spanning PS2, PS3, and PS4. Now, I must say, I was right. You guys told me that this wasn't going to happen, and people can go back into old episodes. I said that Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us, and these others would get native PS5 releases. And we're seeing that it's now happening. And probably there might even be working backwards now. And so we'll see The Last of Us Part 2 next, I think. And then it will ultimately maybe end up with God of War getting ported right before the new one comes out. And so on and so forth. Maybe Horizon sneaks in there.
Yeah.
So want to give myself a little pat on the back, as I often like to do. Now, Chris, what do you make of this Ghost of Tsushima? I know you love the game. I love the game. Dustin loves the game. What do you think about this news?
I think it's smart. I think this is exactly what I said literally last episode, where I was like, hey, listen, they're not going to just port base Ghost of Tsushima to PS5. It's going to be in some package thing with some new DLC thing. Like, that's the only way they're going to do it, because as it stands, no one's going to pay for a PS5 version of Ghost of Tsushima that's just Ghost of Tsushima again. Like, they need a reason to sell it again, and it's going to be the DLC, and that makes a ton of sense. Like, and I think this is exciting. I'm like super pumped. I loved this game, and any excuse that I have to come back to it with new story shit, very, very excited. This is very cool. And I'm a little confused about this pricing thing. Like, so what is it like?
So here's how I understand it, and people are making fun of it online, and I think reasonably so. If you're a PS4 player, you can download the director, or you can get the director's cut content on PS4 for $20. That'll then bring you up to speed with the PS5 native version of the game, which you can then get for $10 more. So I think that's how it works. So it's like basically $30 to upgrade and get everything.
Okay.
No, yeah, I think I'm understanding that right. I could be wrong.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
The thing that I'm trying to figure out is that, okay, if you have a PS5, you put the PS4 disc in, you pay $20. Can you choose $20 for the director's cut upgrade? And then if you want to do,
I think you have to do one
version,
and then the other. I think you have to do. That's what my assumption is, that you do one and then you do the next.
I hate this fucking version shit so much. I just wish it just read the hardware.
We're paying $10 for this PS5 app version of it, which the PS4 version that runs on PS5 is really fucking good. So to me, I'm like, is it worth $10 for DualSense features? Like,
yeah, I guess that's what you're paying for,
right?
I guess that's what that $10
Well, that's
is.
why I mean, this sounds great, but I'm a little disappointed that they're charging for the upgrade, when really what they could have done is just said, to promote the upgrade, is just say, like, we're releasing a piece of DLC. It'll come to both PS4 and PS5. In celebration of that, we are bringing the game fully to PS5. You can just get it for free, and then you can buy the DLC on whatever you want for $15 or whatever. Now, Andrew Goldfarb, who I used to work with at IGN, wrote the blog post on behalf of Sucker Punch on PlayStation blog. And I did note that it seems light on detail about this expansion, not because they want to spoil it, but because I think, and I could be wrong, I feel like this expansion may be more like Festival of Blood size. If you think about the Infamous 2 expansion, less First Light size, which was a standalone platinum trophy expansion of Infamous Second Son. Dustin, how are you feeling about that assessment based on what you were reading? Because I'm trying to kind of read between the lines. It seems like they're not talking a whole lot about it. Like if it was a big ass expansion, which I doubt it is, then they would have probably made a bigger deal about it. And that's why I think they should have just said, we made a $10 or $15 expansion. We're very proud of it. And we're bringing the game to PS5. So download for free.
Yeah. I'm kind of expecting it to be on the lighter side as well. Though the fact that it's a whole new smaller sized island, I'm guessing it'll be short if you want it to be, where if you just play through the main missions, but then there will be all the collectathon stuff to do as well. I will say two interesting points about this announcement. First of all, it's hilarious to me that they're making it a feature for the Japanese lip sync, because that was sorely missing. Like, I wanted to play the game in Japanese because I wanted it to be like a Japanese movie. And then their lips just completely did not match. I was like, what? Why? Who would do this? So it's like it's a feature that they're advertising. I'm like, yo, this should have been the case in the beginning because it made it look fucking terrible. Like, don't sell me on that.
There's also, like, I don't know if you saw the trailer, but like the when they showcase the Japanese lip syncing, it's literally just like like it's like Muppet mouth movements. Like it's I think it's literally just they have like an algorithm tied to each character that's like open mouth when sound happens. Is what it seems like. It doesn't seem like it's actually like, and I mean, like, I get it, like lip syncing like that is a bitch,
right?
So like I get it on some degree, but I thought it was a little weird to highlight that as a feature when it just kind of ends up looking like literally like anime, when it's just like the same exact mouth shape for every single word. It's almost, I would argue it's barely a feature.
Oh yeah,
almost,
right.
You know?
It should have. I don't know. I feel like that should have been there in the first place. The second interesting thing I think to analyze overall is that here's a tweet from Herman Holst just 3 hours ago that said, "One of my favorite open worlds to explore, now with even more to see and do on a whole new island. Our director's cut releases will offer all new content, and on PS5 will leverage the hardware's advanced features." So remember also that Death Stranding has a director's cut coming. And we made fun of that because we're like, Kojima needs a director's cut. Clearly, this is a branding decision from Sony that their re-releases from PS4 to PS5 are going to be considered director's cuts.
Yeah, well said. Well put.
And Colin, you brought up the possibility of what other games. Surely Last of Us Part 2 is the next director's cut game, or at least in the pipeline.
Well, this is what's so complicated about it, because the rumor is of them remaking The Last of Us is so stupid because, first of all, the game, again, doesn't need to be remade, and they could actually start doing that in more linear order and get the first one out on PS5 first, and then so on and so forth. And this, I got to say it, what I was saying earlier, I mean, this is great news. I loved Ghost of Tsushima. It was so fun. Sucker Punch is a great studio, and they basically pioneered first party expansions for Sony games with Festival of Blood. And like, no one was really doing anything like that. And I feel like, well, two things. Why do you have to wring more money out of this? The entire idea of backwards compatibility was that the game would perform in its best possible way. We were making fun of like smart delivery, right? I can't believe I made fun of that for so long, because this is what it is. It's like, well, if the PS5 can run Ghost of Tsushima like this, then you should probably just patch it and make it run like that. And that is the perpetual version of the game. I don't understand what you guys are doing. And it seems like a little bit of nerve to be like, well, we're charging you again. You know, it's like, well, I don't want you to do that. And I find that peculiar, yet I'm in a little bit of a bind because I want to play the expansion. And So I'm going to I'll just pay the $20 for the expansion on PS4. I'm not going to play it on PS5. I'll play it on PS5, but I'm not going to do the PS5 version. And it's the same thing with Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'll just wait for the PS4, the inevitable PS4 version of that Yuffie DLC. So I just, from the marketing perspective, it's a little confusing. It makes me a little scared of what they're going to do with Death Stranding and how fucking annoying that's probably going to be. But you're right. You're absolutely right, Dustin. This does seem like a new branding opportunity for them. And so I would expect God of War Director's Cut and so on and so forth. But congratulations to Sucker Punch getting something out. The rumors were true. Always funny when these things leak and they end up being true. Number 5. All right, let's now get into some of this more questionable news. The recent Silent Hill rumors may have been resolved, and you may not like how. Publisher Konami and developer Bloober Team have announced a so-called strategic partnership, in quotes, that will see Bloober vaguely working on one or more Konami-related products. Interestingly, neither side's press release says anything about Silent Hill, but recent rumors pegged Bloober as being attached to Konami to help Silent Hill live again. Website Video Game Chronicle likewise has sources noting Bloober is working on Silent Hill and that a Japanese developer is working on something separate using that license. So we know that there are now 2 Silent Hill games, which doesn't dissuade us of the blue box stuff that's happening, which maybe could be that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Metal Gear Solid and Castlevania are likewise getting similar outside treatment, though the fruits of that are further off and Bloober is not necessarily involved in that. Bloober Team, a Polish studio founded in the late aughts, was once a low-budget indie team best known for its Amen series on Vita, its disastrous PS4 launch window game Basement Crawl, and more. However, the studio went all in on horror, beginning with 2016's Layers of Fear, and the studio has since created 2017's Observer, 2019's Layers of Fear 2, and 2019's Blair Witch, which are all on PS4, as well as one-time Xbox Series X console exclusive The Medium, which is due out on PS5 later this year. As for Konami, the publisher has largely been dormant outside of some collections and indie publishing projects, but it seems like that might change very soon. JM wrote in and said, "Greetings, nerds. What are your thoughts on Konami working with Bloober Team seemingly on a Silent Hill project? I think us Silent Hill fans have found ourselves in a monkey's paw situation. Bloober's team track record is spotty at best and doesn't inspire confidence for me personally." Chris, what did you make of this announcement?
I think it's a little weird. I actually don't dislike Bloober Team as much as like a lot of people do, but I also just think it's like Silent Hill seems like a bit huge for them. You know, it seems like I don't know. It's kind of like it's like putting a little leaguer, with all due respect, into like the major leagues. It's like, you know, like I enjoyed The Medium genuinely. Like I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. Like it was definitely like a quieter kind of horror game, but I enjoyed it and I had a good time with it. But like, and I could see like a little bit of Silent Hill in it. It's definitely got like some skeleton of that series in it. I could tell that there's inspiration from it, but I don't know. This is bizarre to me, especially with all these other rumors with like Blue Box. You know, like, well,
it's a
little bit disappointing.
This is what's peculiar to me too, and I guess I should read the other side of this before I pitch it to you, Dustin, because we got another letter from Michael Dudich, who wrote in and said,
"Go for it.
Hey boys, isn't the reaction of the Bloober and Silent Hill rumors just excessively negative? I count myself among hardcore Silent Hill fans, and Bloober certainly wouldn't be my first choice for the license, but why wave them off so flippantly? I was pleasantly surprised by The Medium, and despite its many flaws, it was already a better Silent Hill game than anything that came out of the franchise after Team Silent has been disbanded. I will say this, if The Medium has been a PS5 timed exclusive, it would be an 80 on Metacritic and praised for its handling of mature themes, a compelling story, and honestly, a pretty solid understanding of Silent Hill's DNA. We are never going to get Team Silent at the helm again, and Bloober have never made a bad horror game. So let's just keep our minds open and wish good luck to every developer who gets the license, shall we? I've been a patron since day one, and it looks like I may never leave. So thanks for all that you do, and have a good one. And Colin, you pronounced my name correctly, and I really appreciate that. I probably just mispronounced it at some point. All right, so Dustin, what do you think of Michael's inquiry here about maybe the excessive negativity surrounding Bloober? And per Chris's point, I have also heard that The Medium is good and that it actually is kind of Silent Hill-ish. And I will also note that I did play and like their 2016 game, Layers of Fear. I did like it a lot. I should note that when I was at Kind of Funny, we had a paid sponsorship with them too. But
right.
Yeah, so anyway, what do you think of all of this?
I think, first of all, I think that the assumption that if The Medium was released on PlayStation exclusively, it would have scored better is ridiculous. I just am not a believer in people that think that either Sony or Nintendo get bumps Like, I mean, in the case of Nintendo, like Mario Golf got a 73 last week. And I think that's a very fair 73 average, we'll say, if we're talking about scores. So the thing about Bloober and the scoring of their games, or I mean, I hate to use the word scoring, but let's say consensus among critics is that their games are always very, very mixed. I'm looking through their scores right now, and there is just a plethora of 4s and 5s for the medium from, what's considered top critics on OpenCritic. On the contrary, though, to bring up the Gamer again, their reviewer gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm seeing a 95 out of 100, 9.3 out of 10, like some super, super high. So they're a bit confusing to me because it really seems like, and it goes beyond the medium. I checked this for Blair Witch and Layers of Fear 2. Like, I think IGN even gave Layers of Fear 2 like a 9 or 9.5. Like, they were real hot. Or that reviewer.
That seems excessive, and other people, but yeah, to each his own. Yeah.
Right. So basically what I'm just saying is that I think that the feelings that Silent Hill fans have is justified. This is a studio that their games come out and are extremely mixed. And so if you're a fan of Silent Hill, you don't want there to be a 50% chance that you like this new game. You want a team with a better consistency working on your favorite or one of your favorite series. So I don't know. Maybe I would love to see Bloober Team hit it out of the park. I've never been particularly very impressed with any of their games, but I've also never played one all the way through. So I need to be fair and transparent about that.
Yeah. I've only played the medium. I've never touched Layers of Fear or Layers of Fear 2, or I think I played a little bit of the Blair Witch. That was like fine. It was like a fine indie project, felt like. But yeah, I don't know. They are very divisive, and like I know nobody that I've ever talked to has ever agreed on their overall scoring of a Bloober Team game, which is kind of interesting. I think that in and of itself is like kind of like an interesting thing about them. But I can understand why people are like a little bit weirded out because it's such a big IP, you know. Like it's not like, and not to say that Blair Witch isn't huge, but it kind of isn't in comparison to fucking Silent Hill, especially in the game space. It's just a very different beast.
I think what's most puzzling for me is just why Konami can't find or isn't interested in working with world-class developers. They have world-class licenses available, presumably. And maybe we're going to find out that Sony is making a Silent Hill game too, and that is happening. I mean, we have no idea, and that would be awesome. But it's just so peculiar if this is happening in a vacuum and we don't know what else. It's just aren't people beating Konami's door down? Like, why wouldn't you see, if I were them, it would be fun to be silent and then come out with a bunch of, or not a bunch, but a handful of projects from our known licenses, all with and almost like a Marvel style. We found different partners for all of our games. Maybe they're going to be on different platforms and come from different places, but we found partners and they're just working like they're just this nonsense entity, and they aren't. So that was why I was so confused by that. I was like, Bloober Team, it's no disrespect to them, but I would have rather them signed a deal to do it exclusively on Xbox with Tango. I'd rather see that than or go to, imagine if Capcom made the game.
That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like, how many world-class horror developers are there left? You know what I mean? Like I maybe 5 max. Like, I really can't think of many.
No, there's not. I mean, we discussed them last week. I mean, there's a handful of studios that really do horror. Red Barrels, Tango, obviously parts of Capcom and others. But it's just, so that's the biggest thing I'm confused about. It just kind of feels like, as we close the story out, I'll just say, it kind of feels like their late treatment of Castlevania. It seems like Castlevania is going to come back, as we noted in a recent rumor. Well, it's not even a rumor. It's just these Castlevania Advanced Collection is leaking on various ratings charts. So we know that's coming, but it reminds me of them working with Mercury Steam on Castlevania. It's like, why are you working with Mercury Steam? Jesus Christ. You are Konami. This is Castlevania. Go get it. Go do something with it. And now Mercury Steam is making that Metroid game, by the way. And people are excited about it. And I'm like, I don't know why. I think you better be very cautious with this team, personally. But regardless, congratulations to Bloober Team, I guess. Chris, this one's for you. Number 6, Remedy Entertainment, the studio behind Max Payne, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and most recently Control, have announced a new Control-related spin-off. The game will be published with Control's original publisher, 505 Games, and will be a 4-player PvE game, which they're internally calling Condor. The press release announcing the game notes that the original Control launched on PS4 in 2019 and since on PS5 has surpassed 2 million copies sold and has made back more than twice its original budget. Remedy, located in Finland, was founded in the 90s. Its first major game was 2001's Max Payne, and the studio later came closely affiliated with Microsoft, with the Xbox 360 console exclusive Alan Wake coming in 2010 and the Xbox One console exclusive Quantum Break following in 2016. Control, Remedy's first released on PlayStation since 2003's Max Payne 2, will be followed by a proper single-player sequel as well, and 505 will also be publishing that game, though there's no word on timing. The studio is also closely working with Xbox, however, particularly on games within the Smilegate-led Crossfire franchise. So this is why I was saying earlier, the studio is clearly just not on the market. Too many intertwining things. Chris, what do you think? So we knew they're making a Control sequel. We've already kind of known that. Now we know that they're partnering with 505 on it. And we also know that it sounds like they're going to make what I would assume is a Left 4 Dead style Control game as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was not going to lie. I was hoping for like more of a single player thing, but it's more Control and it's more Remedy, which I'm always happy about. So like, I'm not going to complain about this at all. Especially because like I have a feeling I'm not going to be all that interested in Crossfire at all. Like it looks fine. It looks like another first person shooter to me. And like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be pretty satisfied as far as that genre goes for quite a while. So like, if I get a new Control game, I'll play that in whatever capacity that I can play it in, because Control is great.
Control is great. I love that game. Dustin, what did you think about this announcement and kind of Remedy's continued pursuit of profit, which is really great to see? I mean, they're working with a lot of different partners, and I know that their name has just been circulating along with IO and some other European studios as possibly being targets of Microsoft. I just can't imagine with these tendrils that Microsoft would be interested, although Crossfire and some of their projects are already Xbox exclusive, so that would take care of that. But I just can't imagine that they would be taking 505's money while also shopping themselves.
Yeah, I think the idea of a multiplayer Control, I mean, instantly I was like, that's not what I want. Same with Chris. But I thought about it some more and I'm like, it could be cool. Imagine everybody has Control like powers and throwing shit all over the place and, stuff's exploding and stuff. I'm like, that might be a bit of a wild ride that I could see myself playing a couple rounds of. But
yeah,
I guess the question is, let's see, will be a 4-player PvE game.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like Left 4 Dead, like I imagine it's gotta be something like that with whatever the fuck those, whatever. I don't remember any of the names of anything anymore. But
I'm wondering if they're viewing it more as not a sequel, a spin-off. You wrote spin-off here, so that makes more sense. But
yeah, it's a spin-off. Control is getting it. Like I said, it's getting a sequel.
Proper sequel too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then this could be fun. I'm wondering.
Keep up, Dustin.
Well, no, I'm just thinking about like a sequel and a spin-off. Like, how do these fit in? Do you do the sequel, this spin-off thing as like a $30 like bonus thing? Is it attached to the sequel? That's what I'm trying to figure out, how the rollout works.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch that. I also am just interested in the economics of it. This is a really fantastic example of making games at scale and doing it affordably. Control costs 25 million euro to make. That's it. 25 million euros. That's it. Stem to stern, getting it out the door. 25 million bucks. And they said that the game made like $70 million. So, and that was only with 2 million copies sold. So they're making something, I think, sustainable on the lower end, where if a game in the 90s sold 2 million copies, that was like fucking nuts that a game would sell that much. And now we're seeing that that's really nothing. I mean, it's actually almost shocking. Like when we saw that the Outer Worlds 1 sold 3 million copies, I was like, that's it? And again, with Control, it's so alive in our sphere, and yet it's not really breaking through. So I think from that perspective, it's interesting that they're doubling and tripling down on the IP. But what I'm more interested in is Control is so weighted down in a good way by its lore how does that shine through in a multiplayer game? Because that's what makes Control interesting to a lot of people, is all the fucking weird Quantum Break style videos and all of that in the game. So they have a lot to balance there, but I think 505 Games is quite eager to continue this. They just made a ton of money on this too. So congratulations to Remedy. Yeah. I'm really interested to see it. I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think they can do it because that just the raw gameplay of Control is like so good to me. Like I love the way that game feels to play. Just the telekinesis in that game is like, I think sincerely probably like the best telekinesis I've ever felt in any game that's ever tried it, even remotely. I think of like maybe like Destroy All Humans is like one of the earliest examples that I can remember, or like even like Star Wars Force Unleashed with like, the picking things up and throwing them, but like Control just feels so good. So I could see like a multiplayer kind of like arena, like cooperative, like endless wave. Actually, that's literally what I was asking for in the original Control when we were talking about it. Was like, this combat feels really good, but every combat encounter feels like it's over too quick. I want to like jump around in this arena and just like throw shit around for like a half hour. I think it'd be fun. So to do that with like multiple players, which would presumably mean, higher enemy density, that seems like a lot of fun. I think this could be really cool. I'm curious as to how far along this is though. Like when we'll see.
Yeah,
this,
it sounds like it's not going to be for a while.
Sounds like it's a ways off.
I would even almost wonder if the sequel comes out first, although it would be interesting for them to come out in tandem. I'm always interested in, I guess I was thinking about this with factions too. Like, is there some way where you could, like, it's like Call of Duty, the campaign and the multiplayer, and how people have always wanted it to be separated out and to be purchased separately, or to be like buy them a la carte or combined. And it would be an interesting experiment to say like Control 2 and the Control PvE versions both come out simultaneously. You can buy them independently or together for like a discount, and just see how you can extract money in that way too. Just some opportunities for them to play around in that middle space. So we'll see what happens. All right. Next up, number 7, Sony has officially revealed July's free PlayStation Plus games. As always, these titles are free for anyone with an active PS Plus account from July 6th until August 2nd. And you should add them to your download list for that during that period, even if you don't intend on playing them now, as that may change. On PlayStation 5, players will get the leaked and now confirmed native PlayStation 5 port of A Plague Tale: Innocence. The action-adventure game first came to PS4 in 2019, Team Asobo, and will be getting a sequel called Requiem in 2022 on PS4 and PS5. Over on PlayStation 4, players will receive Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Treyarch's 2018 entry in the Call of Duty franchise, as well as their cartoonish WWE 2K Battlegrounds, Saber Interactive's very poorly received 2020 release. Remember, PS4 players can also still download Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown for free during this month too, which was also available for free in June. Pretty weak month. Anything there for you, Chris?
Plague Tale, I've heard is really great, and I haven't had a chance to really play it. So if that is like that's a native PS5 port, right?
The Plague Tale port is a native port, yes.
Okay, yeah. Then I'll probably jump into that. A lot of people have been telling me to play it, and I think I would like it too. So, but that's really it. I have no interest in WWE 2K.
Yeah, that game apparently got destroyed in the reviews. WWE 2K is just a kind of a failing brand at this point, which is surprising now that the original Japanese team that made those games is gone. But Black Ops 4 is the multiplayer only one, right? Or am I crazy?
Yeah, no, that's the multiplayer only.
Yeah. Anything here for you, Dustin?
I'm excited to check out Plague Tale. I started that on PC years ago. I was actually playing with Holly, but it was too intense. Like she said, it was stressing her out. Like, okay, I'll drop it. And so I'm excited to go back and play it all.
Women
myself.
Are so dramatic.
I know. Come on. What's wrong with a rat horde trying to eat you alive? No problem, right?
All right. So I'm back. I had a catastrophic, it's not really catastrophic, I guess. It's just raining, thundering. It's actually weird. It started raining now. I don't know if you guys can hear it through the mics.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of cool.
So I actually went downstairs when I was waiting for the router to reboot, and it hadn't even rained at all yet. So the thunder was knocking out something else. And what's annoying is I live in a new neighborhood, and all the power lines are buried. So it always makes you wonder, it's like, what son of a bitch out there has their wire above ground? But if I go away again, you guys will have to finish the show without me, because it sounds like we're going to get washed away here soon.
Cool.
But
all right.
In the meantime, Dustin, I want to kick this one over to you, particularly so we can talk for a minute. Number 8.
Oh.
If you're a fan of the long-running Kaseki JRPG series, which we know as Trails in the West, then there's very good news. 4 games from the franchise that have never seen Western release are all launching in the next 2 years. The biggest announcement of the 4 is undoubtedly The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie, which comes to Japanese PS4s in 2020 and which we'll see release on PlayStation 4 in 2023. It's a sequel to the Trails of Cold Steel subseries that helped the wider franchise gain Western popularity, and it also crosses into the overarching Legend of Heroes mythos from which Trails hails. From here, we can get into the truly obscure Trails stuff fans will really love. 2 Japanese-only PSP games, 2010's The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero and 2011's The Trails of Heroes Trails to Azure, are both getting Western localizations for the first time. Trails from Zero will come to PS4 in late 2022, while Trails of Azure will follow in early 2023. And they're both obviously only on PlayStation 4 for our ecosystem. Both games saw Japanese-only Vita and PS4 ports. The final announcement is in the form of The Legend of Nayuta, Boundless Trails, an action RPG spin-off launched on Japanese PSPs in 2012. This game is more related to the Legend of Heroes / Dragon Slayer mythos and not Trails itself. It just came to Japanese PS4s last week and will receive a worldwide PS4 launch in 2023. All of these games come from storied Japanese developer Falcom, founded in the early 80s and best known for its Ys franchise. Publisher NIS America is acting as publisher. Dustin, Chris, I'll skip you on this one completely. I won't even put you up to it. Dustin,
yes.
I don't know if you read the interesting stuff about this, that it was a fan translating group that actually helped make these games possible. Did you see anything about that?
Oh, I did not see that. I saw all the announcements. I was like, damn, it's a lot of shit coming for this franchise, but I didn't know that. That's always cool when that happens. I like that, to see the partnership between fans and developers.
Yeah, there's like a fan group that I guess was translating these as patches for emulators, and they kind of found their way to NIS America, which obviously has their connections with Falcom and so on. So they're bringing those games locally. I think that's super cool. It's kind of annoying because of the late nature of these games. They're announcing games that are coming out in 2023, basically, and we're gonna start seeing that date more as we move forward. Obviously, as we get further into the calendar, but it's just so strange where it's like 2023, 2023, 2023. And then you really think about it and I'm like, well, it's not that far away. I mean, it's a year and a half away. It's not ideal, but I know a lot of people are excited about that. And I have to say that all of this support, Western support, actually makes me much more inclined to go back to the Trails games and try again, because I just feel like there's so much. It's not like Persona where, and I think Persona's fine, but where there's just a few games. I know that people want 3 FES or whatever re-released and all of the rest, but I feel like with Trails there's just so much, and so if you like it, if you can get into it, then maybe there's a lot to love. I don't know. We'll see.
That seems to be
talking a big game.
Falcom's thing is like big long running series, like you mentioned Ys, of course, and then
I mean that goes back 30 years. Trails goes back to the Dragon Slayer franchise, which I think is even older than Ys. I want to say that series might even go back to like the early to mid 80s. So it's kind of cool, that they have all of these, but I'd have to go look to be sure. Number 9, if you're looking forward to playing Grand Theft Auto 5, then you better keep looking forward because it's going to be a while. A reliable source, specifically Tom Henderson, a YouTuber respected for his Call of Duty and Battlefield leaks, notes that the game won't launch until 2025. Apart from this, details are scant, though Henderson states that the game will take place in a modernized Vice City and that the game could even have a Fortnite-like map that can be constantly edited, evolved, and morphed into something new for players. So that's all we have, but considering the source, it's likely true. And the rampant success of GTA 5 spin-off GTA Online is probably the culprit. The original Grand Theft Auto came to PS1 in 1997 and 1998 throughout the world and was followed by a sequel in 1999, also on PS1, and a seminal third game, Grand Theft Auto 3, on PlayStation 2 in 2001. Widely considered one of the most influential and important games of all time, GTA 3 spurred developer to proceed to release games in quick succession, beginning in 2002 with Vice City, and then in 2004 with San Andreas, and again in 2008 with GTA 4. There were DLC packs and other spin-offs too, but GTA hit truly stratospheric levels with 2013's Grand Theft Auto 5. At 145 million units sold, it's the second best-selling game ever, only behind Minecraft. In fact, I was looking at the numbers, and GTA 5 has outsold every Grand Theft Auto game combined up to that point. Chris, what do you think? GTA 6, 4 years out.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I even think that sounds generous. There was a time where I would have been shocked to have even to even hear the news that they would even consider working on it, because GTA Online is just so profitable and so presumably easy to maintain, that it's just like, why not just continue to make like a boatload of money for comparatively like very little creative output. But this seems about right. Like I don't, we're not going to play a new GTA game in it for a while. Like this seems pretty accurate.
God, Dustin, I was reading here just real quick that the just to kind of catch up on this, because I don't play Fortnite, but
yeah,
the idea of this kind of because I know that like, and it's exciting, I guess, for players, like there's things that pop up in the world suddenly and like these hints and all of that. And it sounds like that's kind of what they want to do, which indicates that GTA 6 will probably be an online game, which is a little disappointing. But what do you make of that? I mean, it sounds like they're trying to adapt a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the big thing that a lot of developers are chasing, this Fortnite ever-changing world every single week. At least when I had played Fortnite, like, I don't know, early on 2 years ago, which I know this is still the case, that it would be like, oh, this week this happened in the world, and so it's a little different. And then between seasons, you'd see like huge things happen, like a fucking meteor hit the island. And so there was a big like spot where there was like a meteor crash. And then a few weeks later, there were scientists that had built a lab within the meteor crash. And so it had a new environment and stuff to explore and, fight in. So this could be very cool for Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto Online players. I don't like the idea of an online only Grand Theft Auto, but maybe they have a static version of the map that exists for their single player, and then they're building it with a changing map in mind for the multiplayer. Who knows? But again, there's so much money in online. You got to think that they're wondering like, why bother in some ways?
Yeah. I do wonder though, like, because Fortnite is so ridiculous and so kind of out there as like a concept, and like, you got fish people walking around, and there's Kratos and Master Chief like fighting each other with like pickaxes, and it's kind of nonsensical. So like, I wonder how they're going to change a map like Liberty City in any way that's going to feel grounded at all in reality, that isn't going to feel like, because I feel like a multiplayer Grand Theft Auto in that style would just ultimately feel like Saints Row or something, like it almost wouldn't even be GTA in the same way anymore, because GTA 5 or Grand Theft Auto Online has evolved over time for sure, but never to the degree where you're like going to see a meteor crash into the middle of the city and it's going to be like, you know what I mean? Like there's a level of groundedness even with the absurdity of GTA Online that's like, I wonder even if you could even really convincingly do that without just completely shattering what the game is.
As I understand it from these rumors, I guess Rockstar's initiative is to make Vice City modern in order that it doesn't get stuck with them being unable to alter it to the time. So it seems like they're trying to plan this thing to be like some sort of palette in which you just constantly paint and paint and paint, and by removing, see, the disappointing thing to me is like, why are you taking Vice City out of the 80s? Why not just stick with San Andreas? Because you have like the best of all worlds there. You have the city, you have the landscape, you have the beach and the water and the beautiful women and all the things that you want to put in the game. That was the advantage of Vice City, but it took place in the 80s. So if you take Vice City out of the 80s, I don't even know that it's very interesting. It's just Miami. It gives a shit. I mean, really.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see what happens. Just an early rumor. We'll be talking about that for years, I'm sure. Number 10, Square Enix has wholly embraced its past in recent years, so it should come as no surprise that it's planning a substantial expansion of its so-called Mana series. In Japan, the series is known as Seiken Densetsu, and it started back in 1991 when the original game, which we received in the West as Final Fantasy Adventure, came to Game Boy. It was later remade for Vita and launched in 2016. Its 1993 SNES sequel popularized the series globally, known in the West as Secret of Mana. Super Famicom exclusive Trials of Mana followed in 1995, though a remake came to Western PS4s in 2020, while Legend of Mana came to Western PS1s in 2000 and PS4 just a week or two ago. Sword of Mana came to GBA in 2003, Children of Mana to DS in 2006, Dawn of Mana to Western PS2s in 2007, alongside Heroes of Mana and DS, etc. As you can see, Square Enix has been re-releasing and even remaking the older games for about 5 years, and in a Japanese language stream, they announced an all-new console game, though it's also apparently a ways off. More imminently, however, they revealed a Legend of Mana based anime series called The Teardrop Crystal, and it's also a ways out. I know you're not into this, Chris, so I'll just ask Dustin again. I don't know if you are either, Dustin, but what I find interesting about this, and I don't feel like people are talking about it too much, is that they announced a new game, and that's pretty substantial because all of the Mana games we've been getting are remakes.
Right.
We never got some of the old games that they've been porting and remaking in recent years. So this is exciting in the sense that it actually expands the lore for the first time, I think, since Dawn of Mana and Heroes of Mana back in 2007. So that's somewhat interesting. And Square Enix is showing a real propensity to kind of go back to these. And it makes me excited because it makes you think like, hey, do you guys remember Front Mission? Hey, do you guys remember Tactics Ogre? Hey, do you guys remember Brave Fencer Musashi? And so on and so forth. So what do you think about this initiative?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I've never played one like a Mana game before, other than I played some of the original on the Super Nintendo Classic. I remember that remake they did of that. Some people thought was a little more budget than they would have liked.
It's a little mobile. Yeah, it's a little mobile style. Yeah.
So, but clearly the series has some kind of legs and they've seen success in these remakes. And so for them to dip their toes back into a new entry is exciting. And I think you're onto something, Colin, in that Square Enix may be interested in exploring their wide array of dormant IP.
Dude, I would murder a man for Front Mission. I could come back. Like, I love Front Mission so much. And that is a series, for people that don't know, it's a strategy RPG series that began on Super Famicom. And we got a few of them in the West on PS2, etc., PS1 as well. And we even got the port of the original one on Game Boy Advance at some point, or was that DS? One of those. But it's a great strategy role-playing game where you play as mechs and you have a pilot, but then you have mechs and you upgrade your armor and all the different components of it, and you go into the maps and fight. And it's just very, very good. And almost like a Advanced War, but way more complicated. And so I would love to see them return to that. And I used to love Brave Fencer Musashi. I loved that game. And they did do a sequel on PS2, but I never played it. So yeah, it's exciting that they might be in, and we even see this with the Final Fantasy collection, although they're not coming to console necessarily, although I feel like they probably will, that they want to go back and they want to do it right. I mean, that was kind of cool. I think we shat on Square Enix quite a bit, rightfully so, about the whole Final Fantasy mobile thing, but they are even taking the old shitty versions down. I was reading, which is awesome. So it seems like maybe they're turning a page and want to do respect their legacy a little bit more, which I would imagine is half the fucking company. Like that's half of what Square Enix is the past. Number 11, Sony's nearly decade-old, incessantly beleaguered handheld PlayStation Vita may have been put back on life support following Sony's out of the blue declaration that it was shutting down its digital store this summer. That's no longer happening, but as reported by website Push Square, other Vita-centered functionality is turning off as promised. As first reported in May, beginning on June 28th, so it already happened, Vita's messaging system was set to terminate, and true to word, that's what happened. You can now no longer message other players via Vita, read messages on Vita, send invites to most games, and more. Also, as the website points out, any messages you had living on the handheld have also been wiped clean. So if you don't have backups on PS3, PS4, or your app, they are gone forever. So nothing to really say there, but just sad to kind of see them slowly shutting the switches. On the Vita.
Last Stand Media, this is how we communicated for all business communication. So we're kind of in between things right now.
Indeed. We use Near. Number 12, it was well over a decade ago that Electronic Arts and BioWare's Mass Effect series was optioned for adaptation into a film. In 2010, the series' developer, BioWare, revealed that Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers were collaborating on a film adaptation with all of the BioWare players at the time, including Ray Muzica and Casey Hudson, on board as executive producers. Optioning actually began behind the scenes further back in 2008 and has been primarily driven by Avi Arad, who produced the Blade film series, a bunch of Spider-Man films, and other Marvel stuff. You may even recall that there was an official San Diego Comic-Con panel for this movie back in 2011, but obviously it never materialized. Now, thanks to a conversation Publication Business Insider had with the game's director, with Legendary Editions director Mac Walters, we may have a better idea of what happened and if there's a future for a Mass Effect film or TV show. Walters, who acted as a writer and designer on all three Mass Effect games from the original trilogy, he directed Mass Effect Andromeda as well and directed the Legendary Edition, told the website in part, quote, "It felt like we were always fighting the IP. What story are we going to tell in 90 to 120 minutes? Are we going to do it justice?" He also notes that it's not a matter of time, or not a matter of if, but when a Mass Effect film or TV show gets done. Timing of this news is interesting considering the aforementioned Casey Hudson reveal of his brand new studio just days ago. They're called Humanoid, and they're hiring for their next game now. Casey Hudson, of course, is notable for his longtime tenure at BioWare, which happened in 2 bursts, interrupted by his brief tenure leading Xbox's studios from 2015 through 2017 until returning, and then leaving again at the end of 2020 following the disastrous Anthem, which came out in 2019 and which saw its plug pulled earlier this year. So on this matter, I'm just curious, Chris, to push it over to you. Do you want to see a Mass Effect film or TV show? I actually kind of feel like a TV show would be cool, but I just don't know what it would particularly be about, because I don't Shepard is supposed to be your surrogate. He's not really very interesting, so I don't know what you would really do.
Yeah, they're kind of locked into a weird situation here where it's like Mass Effect is like Shepard's super important to Mass Effect, but at the same time, I think everybody can unanimously agree that the characters are what make Mass Effect really special and really cool. So I think you could potentially have like a Mass Effect TV show about the characters that aren't Shepard, and that could be probably pretty good. I just wonder, like, so much of Mass Effect is choice and player input and, making decisions, and there's no question that world is really rife with like a lot of good lore and a lot of good stories to tell. I just wonder, like, if an episodic series is the best thing to do, or maybe like something a little bit more like an anthology type of show, like, hey, here's a Garrus episode, and hey, here's a story from the front lines, here's the backstory of like Miranda or something.
Right.
I'm not super sure like if there's a really convenient, easy, like by the numbers way of doing a Mass Effect TV show, but I know for certain a Mass Effect movie would not work like that. It's just far too much world building, far too much story that you'd have to fucking. It would be like, have you guys ever seen the Series of Unfortunate Events movie with Jim Carrey where they shoved like 3 whole books into like an hour and like 30 minutes, and it was just like the most baffling, high octane nonsense that I've ever seen.
That rules.
I think a TV show is the way to go, but I think maybe something a little bit more background lore focus would probably be the most ideal way to go about it.
Yeah, what do you think, Dustin?
Man, Mass Effect makes perfect sense for like an HBO show. You've got space, you got drama, you got titties, you got dongs, and
great supply. Yeah.
So it just sounds like you could. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like you could do a Game of Thrones style show in space, and the way I would do it, of course, is not with Shepard, as you guys said. Like, do a different crew of people that have their own personality. You can use the world. The world is what we want. We don't need those characters from the game, but I'd love to see something like that happen.
Let me hit you with this idea. What about, like the First Contact War or something, like a TV show about when the humans find the Turians for the first time, or when they find that there's evidence of alien life, that was on Mars and Sharon was a mass relay. Like they can go back and to a more primitive, in quotes, time of when humans didn't quite know that they were like, they had to learn that there was something else around, but they didn't really know when they were going to encounter it. And that Turian human conflict is at the center of Mass Effect's story. So it would be cool to do that as well. Stephen Forgione wrote in and said, "Hey boys, hope all is well. Casey Hudson announced a new studio." We mentioned that. And is this a target Sony should go after? While he was behind the Mass Effect 3 ending, he also spearheaded the entire trilogy and the original Knights of the Old Republic. It's possible this team will get suitors from all sides of the industry. Thoughts? Keep up the great work. Not an acquisition, but a second party relationship would be interesting with these guys. It's much more tantalizing than anything that they've announced so far with any of the groups that they've announced. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think a second party thing would be interesting, because here's the thing. It's like, this is a new studio. It's just the name. They don't have anything behind them, but Casey Hudson is a pretty big name, and he spearheaded some pretty impressive projects, some really important projects in the industry. This is definitely a studio to keep your eye on, but at the same time, Casey Hudson, what he was at BioWare, he left and joined and then left. There's reason to maybe not want to go all in on something like this until you can see something more substantial and more concrete out of that team. But with that said, like I do think, I think a second party kind of, hey, we'll see where this kind of goes. I think that would be wise to maybe facilitate, maybe look into. Obviously, a name is only a name, and this, just because somebody's attached to a studio doesn't necessarily mean that much, but it's better than random. It's better than like, hey, here's, again, no offense, like it's a more tantalizing studio existence than like Jade Raymond leaving Google, like, and then a week later having like a team set
People
up
think we're so mean to Jade Raymond. I don't think we are.
We're not trying to be. It's just a matter of fact. It's just, these are very different things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wonder, Dustin, what do you think about Sony trying to kind of get with them on something? Because clearly they're hiring, and they clearly have an investor or investors, so they don't maybe have a publishing deal yet. They might not even have a game. So
right. Yeah, I mean, Casey Hudson, I think that Steven brought up a great point, that a lot of people kind of blamed him for the Mass Effect 3 ending, and he was kind of like on people's shit list or whatever for a while. I don't think that's fair. He also mentioned he spearheaded the entire trilogy, Knights of the Old Republic. And, his back and forth with BioWare is a little interesting, a little telling. You got to wonder if like that's an EA problem, that he came back and thought that they asked him to come back maybe and save things, and then it was like, I can't do that with you guys the way you want to operate or something. So I'm just saying that there's a possibility that isn't his fault. But
he also had a very ignominious tenure before Phil Spencer as the head of the Xbox studios. People forget about that. He was in charge of Xbox's game studios for a minute,
right,
in between Xbox 360 and during the Xbox One era. So we'll see. Wrap up, short one this week. Number 13, website Gamatsu reports RPG Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous comes to PS4 this fall. The website also reports 2D action RPG Ender Lilies Quietus of the Nights has been delayed on PS4 and will now come to the console sometime in the third quarter of this year. Website Push Square reports Rhythm Games Synth Riders comes to PSVR on July 27th, and canceled Atari Jaguar FMV game American Hero comes to PS4 this summer. The website reconfirms that the upcoming Musou Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires is still en route to both PS4 and PS5 by the end of this year. Wizards of the Coast have revealed that Magic the Gathering game Magic Legends, which was in beta on PC and was coming to PS4, has been officially canceled for all platforms, including PlayStation 4. And finally, publisher/developer Atlas announced that Persona 5 Royal has surpassed 1.8 million units sold, while Musou hack and slash spinoff Persona 5 Strikers sits at 1.3 million units sold. So congratulations to Atlas and Sega for that. Boys, let's not tempt the weather gods anymore, as tradition dictates. 6 question, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. We wrap every show up. Remember to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We could not do this without you, and we thank you so much for putting us at an all-time high over there. We hope you enjoy all of the content. Gurnico wrote in and said, hello, CDC, longtime follower here, been enjoying Colin since the Beyond days. Welcome. I was a day one kind of funny supporter, and I am current loyal listener and evangelist of Sacred Symbols. Thank you. My question today is meant to pick your brains on the topic of gaming information. I am starving for a good gaming site other than Twitter. I want to read long-form articles and thought-provoking takes. Gaming really needs its own academia like film and literature, and right now, it feels like it's in the liminal space of becoming who it is, but it doesn't quite know yet what it truly is. I miss the days of gaming magazines and internet gaming sites when it was actually all about the games. Do you have any recommendations? Sites you frequent or specific writers who write in alluring ways? Apart from a handful of voices like your own, I've really lost touch with who is actually relevant in the industry. Please help me find the scribes and scholars of the industry. I am lost. I don't know if we need to talk so much about the scholarship. I'm more curious, Chris, like, do you go anywhere for games news? There are a couple of websites that I think are actually very good, and I'm going to shout them out, but I'm curious, like, do you go anywhere, or are you really absorbing everything from Twitter and social media? Are you absorbing it from YouTube and Twitch, et cetera? Because he's asking, like, who are the players? And I actually feel like there's almost no players in the games media anymore. The players, we're, I guess, minor players, but the players are on Twitch. The players are on YouTube. So where do you go anywhere for kind of that old school kind of news?
In my experience, yeah, like there's a lot of content creators that I go to. Like there's specifically a friend of mine Skill Up. He's like this Australian dude. He does a lot of like video game reviews, but he also has like he also covers news like I think like every week or something. He'll have like some like wrap up, and I'll go to that. And then a lot of the times, to be honest, there are people who will just send me stories. I think probably like listeners of the show will just like send me, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? And like in my message requests on DMs on Twitter or Instagram or otherwise, that's usually where I get a lot of information. You know, it's almost like this weird kind of like filter where it's like I don't have to go through a bunch of websites. People will show me the stuff that, or people will send me things that they think I would be interested in, and usually 9 times out of 10 I am. And that's just usually how I get my news. Granted, that's a very specific situation that I'm lucky to be in, where I just don't have to sift through a lot of stuff. If you're your average person, or like just your average listener, somebody who like maybe like works a 9 to 5, who maybe wants to keep in touch with the industry but doesn't have a whole lot of time, you probably don't have people just sending you news in the same way. But I get around without necessarily needing a website to go to.
What do you think, Dustin? Is there anything that kind of is attractive to you, or are you a similar way?
No, the scribes are all gone because they're, like you said, on YouTube. Like, why?
Well, I was one of them.
Yeah, you can't make money writing anymore. I mean, some people do, and I think hopefully they realize they're very blessed to be in that position. But the real thinkers and analysts are making videos on YouTube. Chris mentioned Skill Up. He's great. A guy that I really like is Joseph Anderson. He does like really long deep dives, analysis on games that are good. Super Bunny Hop is one that's also thinks about games in a really interesting way. Kyle Bossman has a new series that I really like. And yeah, the people that are thinking deeply and have takes on games are on YouTube for sure.
I'll just say from my own perspective, because there is a lot of I don't watch very much games coverage. I don't listen to any games coverage. I really don't know what anyone does on a video game podcast. I really don't. Like, I have no idea. I've never listened to one. I don't care. I think that's what makes our podcast unique, because I'm not trying to replicate anyone. But I know that he was also asking for websites. And there are 2 websites that I do want to shout out that I actually think are really good. The first is a website that always comes up on this podcast, and it's Push Square, which is a PlayStation-centric website. They don't write too much in terms of op-eds. They're not political. It's just a bunch of news, and it's very granular. Gamatsu's kind of similar in that sense as well, if you just want game announcements. But a website that has come on the scene more recently that comes up on our show is Video Game Chronicle, or Video Games Chronicle, VGC. And it's run by an OG British journalist named Andy Robinson. And I highly recommend that site too. It's just videogameschronicle.com. It's literally just news, and they break a lot of news too. So if you just want to, like, that's a site I go to when I write the show. Push Square I go to. But I also go to IGN, Kotaku, Polygon. I want to just see what everyone's saying. But those are the sites I recommend. And they're both owned by ReadPop, and I fucking hate ReadPop because ReadPop owns PAX and they can eat my asshole and not like it. But they do own Push Square. They do own VGC. They also own other things like US Gamer and a bunch of sites no one reads. But I want to give a shout out to those guys because I think they're great. Ross Wynyard wrote in and said, "Hi, CDC. Listening to your most recent Sacred Symbols, specifically the part about Ghost of Tsushima being ported to PC, got me wondering what the first PS5 title will be ported might be. Personally, I would love to see a report of Returnal. I'm playing the game right now and can't help but think its hardcore nature would perfectly suit the PC player base. And selfishly, I would hope that the inevitable boost sales would help drive demand for another similar project from Housemarque. Also, the PS5, capable as it may be, is only able to run the game at an internal resolution of 1080p. It would be great to see what it looks like and runs like on a higher end PC. What Sony game would you guys like to see ported and why?" So this is an interesting question. I never really thought about it. What PlayStation 5 game will come? Dustin, what do you think? Do you think there's any... I actually disagree with him. I don't think Returnal seems like a PC game at all. I actually think that is very much a PlayStation game in my mind.
Really?
Yeah, I don't... I know that the roguelike aspect of it is, but people play puzzle oriented, like that just, I guess because it's a Housemarque game, it just feels like something that's, maybe I'm wrong, but that's very console oriented.
Well, I think the first thing I will say is I don't think we're going to get any PS5 games on PC for quite a number of years, at least I would say 2. But I feel like Returnal, that's one that I thought about when I was playing Returnal. I was like, I think I would be much better at this game on mouse and keyboard than on a controller, just because it's so fast and twitchy. And I've gotten so used to playing shooting games, we'll say, whether it's first or third person on PC with keyboard and mouse, that's one that I would personally like to see. And in the fact that he mentions that the PS5 runs it at an internal resolution of 1080p, and it is a little questionable if you ask me. So it would be cool to see what, a 3080 could do with Returnal.
What do you think, Chris? Do you think that Dustin's inclination of us not seeing anything for a while is true? I don't know why I never really considered like PS5 games themselves, because we're so much in the space right now of bitching about PS4/PS5 cross-gen games that we never even realized or stopped to think about what the plan was with PS5/PC.
Yeah, I think it's going to be even longer than 2 years. I think maybe 2025 is probably when we're going to see, sincerely, late, like into the generation. Just because I feel like we haven't even gotten Bloodborne,
Right.
And what is that? What was that? 14, 15? What year was that? Dustin knows.
Bloodborne is 2015.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And it's 2021 now. It's been 6 years. No, not even a native PS5 version of that game. No PC version. So my first inclination would be oh, the first game that's probably going to be ported proper PS5 game to PC. My guess would be Demon's Souls, but we don't even have, Bloodborne yet. So maybe not. We're not even really in a generational point right now where we're even getting native PS5 games. Would you consider Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut a native PS5 game? I wouldn't.
No, definitely not. That's not a native PS5 game.
No, so we have to wait probably till 2022 because Ratchet and Clank isn't going. Ratchet and Clank just is not. That's just so PlayStation centric. It's hilarious. So I would imagine 2022 is around the time when we're going to start seeing proper native PS5 exclusive titles. So you have to assume 3 years after that is when you're probably going to start seeing hints of native PS5 games moving over to PC. Whereas I feel like the next few years are going to be populated, as far as the PC space goes, by a lot of PS4 games that maybe just haven't made the jump yet. And I think there's a lot of time for that to be done as well. God of War, the first God of War still hasn't showed up. Presumably, The Last of Us, we saw that leaked document. Not The Last of Us, the Uncharted 4 or whatever. Mm-hmm. We saw that is apparently in the cards. So I think it's going to be a while before we see native proper PS5 games being ported over to PC, especially just because we don't know how these things are designed and how well they would scale to things that aren't on SSDs. There's a lot to handle in that space.
Well, let's see what happens. I agree basically with the assessment that it's a ways off. I think that would be kind of catastrophic, but it goes back into the discussion we were having too, that some of the second party multiplayer centric games must cross between PS5 and PC. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
I think this one's funny. I wanted to get your takes on this. Courtney Williams wrote in and said, "Hey, captains of the SS Steamboat, did you see the Xbox Game Pass memes kicked off by Destin Legary on Twitter? And did you find them funny? It was pretty amusing to see PlayStation fans getting so riled up. Why do you think people are being so sensitive now that the shoe is on the other foot?" I have to say, man, I do think PlayStation fans are getting quite sensitive out there right now. I want to just reiterate that, just more sensitive than usual. It reminds me a lot of the early PS3 era when people were like, yeah, I want to play Haze and I want to play Heavenly Sword. And it reminds me a lot of that kind of era. And I'm wondering if you guys saw this kind of meme going on. Microsoft ended up embracing it, which I thought was very funny. Dustin, what do you think?
I think it's funny. I don't, it's cute, everyone joining in, but at the same time, I personally wouldn't have advised joining in, just because there are content creators that make some not shady deals, but there are content creators that make content that is sponsored and appears as real content. So I wouldn't want to make jokes about that, even though I think that the whole, the PlayStation fanboys that were accusing people of being paid by Microsoft to tweet about Game Pass is ridiculous. I wouldn't make a joke as in to say that that's the most ridiculous thing ever, because that shit does happen. So
it's fair enough. Well, Chris, what did you make of the of this. I thought it was funny. I actually retweeted Destin. I love Destin. We'll get him on the show soon.
Yeah,
on Sacred Symbols Plus. Yeah, what did you think?
It's funny. It is funny. Like, I don't even think necessarily this is, because I didn't really notice all that much of a fanboy reaction to this. I just saw the meme, so I didn't even know where this stemmed from. Like, to me, the biggest outpouring of like oversensitivity from the Sony or the PlayStation fan base came when games were being announced for PC and they were just like really angry about it. Like, that to me was like the thing that I just couldn't understand. This whole Game Pass meme is, I thought it was funny. I thought it was like an amusing little flash in the pan on Twitter and on social media. I think, look, it's just an objectively good value. Like, people are going to, if they're paying attention to the game space, people are going to tweet about it just because it's like, you can't not notice it. And at certain points, sometimes shit comes out like, dude, like when Outriders burst onto the scene like day one, it was like that was a big fucking deal. And even things like Back 4 Blood, when that was announced as day one, these are big moments, and people are going to talk about them. And it doesn't mean that everybody's just paid. It just means that it's just a common sense, like, yeah, that's pretty good value, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just hard. It's hard to put myself in the mindset of somebody who just doesn't understand that, like, because I feel like it's so far removed from the way that I think about this space.
I agree with you, in especially in the sense of it seems like a confluence right now. Like, Game Pass is at the right price, the right time, the right machine. It's existed for a while, but it's all coming together and it's growing, and people have a lot to say about it. It reminds me a little bit, to a lesser degree, of like kind of the fear around PlayStation Plus. People were really negative about it 10 years ago, and then it slowly became this thing that people just liked and would promote. And I don't think it's quite as noticeable with Game Pass because it's more of a Netflix style subscription. But of course, people are going to be enthusiastic about it. How can you not be enthusiastic about how can you not be enthusiastic about it? It's very interesting.
It feels impossible not to just acknowledge like what it is and how valuable it is to a lot of people, and how valuable it is to games in general. And this is why I'm saying, like, dude, listen, the people who like are freaking out about certain games coming to PC on the Sony side as if it's like going to like hurt them. It's like, dude, like Sea of Thieves right now is like one of the top selling games on Steam, even with Game Pass like in play. It's like, this is a big deal. Even if you consider the fact it's like, oh, it's a bunch of sales that don't happen, it's still a heavily populated game, a very popular game that's probably arguably only this popular because it's so accessible to so many people.
Right.
And it gets people talking about it, and it gets like, it allows the developers to keep working on it and keep putting more stuff into it. And now it's like a fucking huge thing. I just think this fear of, what bothers me more than this Game Pass meme or just like oh, you're paid, is really just the insistence that like PC is like a negative thing. Like, because that's where I see this mentality really at the forefront of like the conversation, where it's like, oh, this game's coming to PC, but this is our game. And it's like, well, you all bought it already.
Yeah. And you're right. And I think it's because I'm in the industry, and I think about this stuff a little bit more than the average bear. So when the PC games started coming, I was like, well, it's strange, but it was inevitable. So I just think sometimes people just don't wrap their minds around the inevitability of some of these things, and they don't know how to deal with it. And it's certainly new. Like, the PlayStation fan base is very touchy right now. Let's say that. They're very touchy right now. And I get it. But I think the Housemarque stuff and the Bluepoint stuff will calm things a little bit. I think we're going to get a state of play soon. We were talking about those cancellation rumors. Maybe we'll get it in August. Who knows?
PlayStation fans, stand down.
Stand down. Jamie Milligan wrote in and said, hey there, my sweet boys. The other week, while Dustin was talking about the Yuffie story DLC for Final Fantasy VII, he briefly talked about how rarely this type of DLC is actually equal to the price. So my questions are as follows. What story-based DLC has actually been worth it for you guys? And is there any that you haven't played but want to get back into? Personally, I'm replaying Mass Effect 3 for the first time in years, courtesy of the Legendary Edition, and I can now I can't believe the From Ashes DLC was separate, making me firmly believe it was part of the original package. And the Blood and Wine expansion for Witcher 3 is probably the best part of that game. Keep up the amazing content and keep those spicy Sacred Symbols pluses rolling out. We will, Jamie. Thank you for writing in. This is an interesting one for me too, Chris, because I am of the mind there have been I like the standalone expansions, like the aforementioned First Light expansion for Infamous, because I feel like it was actually kind of similar with Wolfenstein's expansions too, where they're just on their own. So I don't feel like I'm missing anything, or I have to go back and play the old game and then find the place on the map to go. When DLC packs are released for games I've already played, I very rarely go back to them. That's why it's so exciting to go back in the future to Witcher, or go back in the future to these other games and like Spider-Man, and experience all that stuff again. So DLC is just not attractive to me, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like usually, like it's really like Control. That's the one where like, and I haven't played the DLC for Control, but I want to. And I remember like I booted up Control again, and I was like, but it's the new version that runs super well, which is the only way that I'm going to play it, and I have to beat the whole game again to play. And it's just like, damn it, I wanted to do this, but I don't know if I want to play Control all the way over again when there's so much else to play. But that's the only thing that I was like looking forward to as far as DLC. Usually, single player DLC is just not enticing to me, because I'm just wondering, it's like, I think about the Spider-Man DLC, which just in my opinion was very lackluster and very like, it just felt like a massive afterthought, to the point where I'm just like, why not just take these story beats and flesh them out in the sequel? Like, I would more than happily wait for a better version of this in a few years than just get this weird kind of sloppy kind of like additive ingredient to the game, especially after such a strong finish. Like, I just find that too often it doesn't feel substantial enough for me to go back and play. And when it does, I just kind of wish it was part of a bigger sequel anyway. So like usually the stuff that I care about as far as DLC goes is like multiplayer stuff, and obviously expansions for like Destiny that bring new like weapons and shit, and like that's fun, and there's like seasonal stories, and like I get it with live service. Like that's the whole model is DLC, and like you kind of like expand on it and expand on it, and you take cycle stuff in, cycle stuff out. But as far as like single player DLC, I'm just it rarely ever grabs me,
Yeah, where is your mind on this one, Dustin? Because I'm almost loath to say this, but I would rather these studios have the DLC ready to go immediately. I know that would really put people off. That brings us back 10 years or 12 years when people would argue that these day one DLC packs were ready to go in the main game and they got split off. And that might be true, but I don't mind the idea. Like when I think about Fallout 3 and the 5 expansions for that, I wouldn't have minded if they were upfront, just like, listen, just pay us another $20. We'll give you all this stuff right now. And then you just can experience the entire game. How do you feel about that? And what do you think about DLC in your own life?
I don't know if I like that, just because I think that DLC is sometimes a unique opportunity for developers to improve on the original product based on consumer feedback. So having that time in between could be valuable. But I also see your perspective on that as well. As far as my relationship with DLC, I overall don't really like DLC, mainly because, like what Chris said, by the time it comes out, I've already moved on. But there are some exceptional products out there as far as DLC. I think that From Software always has great DLC. Notoriously, Dark Souls 2, a lot of people consider that the DLC, it's worth suffering through Dark Souls 2 to play the DLC because it's way better than the main game. And then, of course, there's like Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare, which is like, it's so different from the regular game. I love that. I love DLC that can go completely balls to the wall wild with something like that.
Is that a standalone? That's a standalone, right?
Yeah, that is a standalone.
True. Yeah,
I remember we gave it a 10 at IGN. I remember.
Whoa, 10 out of 10. Damn. But yeah, so it's really hard to say. There's other DLCs that I've bought. Like this Yuffie DLC, I'm kind of a little mixed on right now because I'm like, well, I'm trudging through another Shinra facility. It is different than ones that I've been to before, but it looks the same. I feel like sometimes too often, I don't want to say they're asset flips. That's too mean, but sometimes it's just like, do we really need this? Like you said, like I would have rather them kind of spent that time just working on part 2 you know?
Yeah, I think Chris is right there. I understand that the idea, games sell in the first few weeks. We always say that. And then the game sales disappear and you want a reason to go back and get people to buy it again. But you also want a reason to make your game of the year edition, your complete edition, all those kinds of things. I know that that's all part of the marketing plan and I get that. And that helps pay for video games. But yeah, to me, I just want the see, like the Yuffie DLC is interesting, but I'm just like, I'm kind of over this now. You know, I don't really, it almost reminds me of when I played Walking Dead and then the 400 Days DLC came out or whatever. And I'm like, I played it, but I was like, this is kind of like, this is random. Where did this come from? So
right.
I think they have to figure out the better calibration. I actually think it depends on the game too. And I do agree that part of the reason why going back to games later is so exciting is because you get to experience the DLC within the world, having never known that it wasn't there, which I think is always the best. And it's just another reason why you should probably not buy games when they come out, unless they're my games. Gerson Mercado wrote in and said, "Greetings, CDC. This is directed to Colin, Smashburger customer of the decade. Thank you. I have a 6-year-old son who's obsessed with Minecraft, and one day while playing it with him, I realized the trophy list read not one, but 2 sets of trophy lists. The second title in Minecraft set 2 on PSN profiles even. Why a new set? Is it due to Sony limiting a certain amount of trophies per game before breaking it off to a completely different list? I know DLC tend to have their own list, but usually within the main set. Have you seen another example of this prior to Minecraft? Well, thanks for the great work you, Chrissy, and Dusty have been providing. Enjoy your week." Thank you, Gerson. Wanted to speak to this real quick because this is coming up more and more. Minecraft is not the only game that did this. I do believe that The Elder Scrolls Online has also done this and a couple of others. But PS3 and then PS4 games could only withstand. So people will remember on PS3, all of the DLC lists were their own lists. And well, let me even go back further. Let's do a little trophy history. First, when trophies came out, the Platinum trophy counted towards the 100% completion rate. Then when DLC started getting trophies, those trophies counted towards the 100% completion rate, but not the Platinum trophy. Then they split those off and stopped counting them as 100% lists. But there's only so much room for so many points. And eventually they have to split off and make a all new list. And it's, as I understand it, they have to get permission to do this. And it's not a problem on PS5. So you won't see it when Minecraft comes forward. So just to answer your technical question, Gerson, I hope that does. Minecraft is one of the few games that does it. And when your son plays on PS5, inevitably, you'll see that those lists are contracted. And finally, let's end on a positive note. Hayden Plimal wrote in and said, "Hi all. I was thinking about this the other day, and do you guys remember Kevin Butler? I used to love those commercials as a kid and as a developing PlayStation fan, Kevin, Marcus, etc. Do you feel that these sorts of marketing personifications and characters were valuable to the brand? With Jim Ryan lacking the celebrity or charisma of previous CEOs, can we see the return of this particular style in advertising? Kevin's out, of course, due to a breaching contract, but I miss the spirit of PlayStation we saw in the PS3 era. We had a mascot, reality TV, some weird sort of demo bus, etc. It was true. In a roundabout way, I guess I wanted to explore your thoughts on what this company can do to enrich its culture and overall consumer engagement for better or for worse. I think PSX returning is a start. As always, thanks for a great show and happy 4th. So, Dustin, what are your memories of Kevin Butler?
Yeah, Kevin Butler, man, I will never forget that E3 that they actually brought him out.
Yeah, it was awesome. I remember I was predicting that, like, wouldn't that be awesome if that, and it did. It happened, which was so funny.
Right, and it sucks how that all shook out. Like he was on a Wii commercial.
No,
right?
he was on. No, this is as I understand it, he was on like a Firestone commercial or something where they play the Wii.
Yeah. Oh, right.
I think that's what it was. Like, I don't think he even did a Nintendo commercial. I think it was like there was a Wii in the ad and there was a breach of contract and they fucking cut him.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of wild. He was nowhere to be found in the PS4 era. Like, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because I feel like, I don't know, I don't know if he lines up with Sony's brand image now,
right.
But at the time and place, like those ads were effective when they were talking about the Kinect and they were like, "Ooh, pew, pew."
Resistance.
Like
yeah,
dude, that was awesome. But I think that Hayden brings up a great point about overall consumer engagement, for better or for worse, and brings up PSX. And man, PSX fucking ruled. It was the best show that I'd ever been to. And I wanted to come back so badly. And it's one of those things that Sony can't quantify the value of PSX. They can charge people $60. They can look at how much it costs them to put on the event, and that's fine. But they can't quantify what that means as far as like, okay, all those people that come are your mega fans. They have the time of their lives. They play all these games that then they go buy later, and they tell their friends about the awesome games they saw, and then they go buy, and you can't quantify that. But it's something that's important. And I think that's something that you see Xbox leaning into is this fun stuff, that mini fridge. The mini fridge is as silly as it may be. That's something that is really cool for their fans.
Yeah, it is. It is cool.
It draws them closer in to this, the branding, which again, they're all corporate entities that want your money. That's not lost on me, but there's something to be said about doing that fun stuff for the most hardcore.
Yeah, I like what you said about Kevin Butler serving us during the PS3 Slim era, which was where Kevin Butler really comes from, and also PSP Marcus. These characters come from an era where it was about comedy and kind of trying to draw people back in, and PlayStation didn't have the reputation it has now. People still kind of connected it with, well, it's still connected with Ratchet and stuff, but it was more comical and gaming fare. And now it's very dire and very serious. So I don't know that would work for them anymore. But I thought it was kind of like weird how he was just thrown away, and like how like who gives a shit, because I think the argument was like people might think that's Kevin Butler, and it's like, oh my God, man, he's an actor. We all know he's not really the CEO of whatever they would say he was the CEO of in that commercial. Because remember, that was the big thing, like CEO of whatever.
Right.
So, yeah. So it was cool, but yeah, Chris, what do you want to see from Sony? Like we were talking a little bit earlier, they did hobble some of their greatest assets, and Gio Corsi's gone, Shuhei Yoshida, who the hell knows what happened with him, and others, and they don't have a really strong ad presence. I will note though that some people internally didn't like those Kevin Butler ads. I know Insomniac was really mad about the Resistance 3 ad, and they actually blame it for the game not selling as well as it could have, because they said it made it seem like it was a move game that like needed the move, and they were really mad about it. But so it didn't always work out for them. But what do you think they need, Chris, to kind of heighten this, get back that feeling, that let's say that 2009 to 2015 PlayStation?
I don't know if you can get that back. I think a post Last of Us 2 Sony is just like I don't know, man. Like there's something so depressing and dire about their biggest IP that I don't know if you could really. I don't know if there's room to have fun, which is kind of sad. Because like I loved Kevin Butler. I thought he was like, even back when I was like, firmly entrenched in the Xbox ecosystem, I had like very little to do with PlayStation. Those ads were always a treat. Like even over on that side of the aisle where people are like, I like this guy a lot. This guy's funny. This is fun to watch. And I like the presence that they have over there. But you can't even try to recapture that, because it would almost kind of seem sad and kind of like, oh, they're trying to, it would almost be like people would be aware that they're trying to recapture that.
Sure.
So they kind of lock themselves in a position where they can't really go back to that. But at the same time, I don't know how valuable it is to stay in the spot that they are now, with like no real personality and no real presence outside of this disembodied state of play voice that, means very little to anybody. It's a really rough situation, because it just sort of feels like they've appled themselves in a weird way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like, I don't know, like it would be funny in some way if you just turn on a commercial and it was like Kevin Butler again, as if and they're like, like he's just at his desk, or like it's the same guy. They wink and nod at it, but I also understand that this is such insider-ish shit. No one cares about Kevin Butler, and Sony can market. I mean, Guy Longsworth, I think that's his name. He was the marketing guy at Sony for a while, and he was not very good. But the people before him and the people after him have been doing a pretty good job, and they can do more iconic stuff. Like, the painting, like the Delaware, Washington crossing the Delaware style painting they did of the guy with like all the PlayStation characters. Like, they should do more stuff like that. And I think maybe focus on merch and focus on, it goes to what Dustin was saying. The fridge thing is just an interesting example. It's like, why don't you have a customized controller store? Why don't you have the ability to PlayStationize anything you want, custom faceplates. Like, I know it's not a big moneymaker.
Yeah.
Neither is merch. You're a multi-billion-dollar international corporation, but you have to do these little things, and it is the unquantifiable nature, as Dustin said, that is most key. So
it's cool to have services like that too. You know, like just the controller thing is so cool. Like I made one. I'm like, because over on the Xbox side they have that design lab, and I made one that is the same color scheme as like the PS1 DualShock, the PS1 analog stick controller, where it's like the gray and like the black, and it looks fucking awesome, and I'm happy that I can just do that. And even just things like that, they're a little bit more like consumer oriented, I think would be like a huge boon for them, like as far as like being seen as like a brand that's a little bit more fun. Because right now I feel like the vibe right now is like they're very kind of hoity-toity and very like yes, we're PlayStation.
That's the way it comes off, you know, for sure.
And it's, I don't know if that's,
think about this, the indie stories and all of the rest. It all kind of contributes to this very weird mystique that's not likable.
Yeah. At least I got my
your memory card.
My memory card bottle opener.
That's awesome.
Oh,
love that. Oh, those were the days. Man. All right. Well, that's all we have for this extended episode of Sacred Symbols of PlayStation podcast. I thank you guys so much for your time. Dustin, do you have any closing comments before we go?
No closing comments other than between this episode and next episode, Colin, you and I will be meeting in the real world.
It's very rare when we come together. So.
Yes, so it'll be exciting. Very excited. And also happy 4th of July to all the listeners out there.
Yeah, we're recording on Canada Day, so happy Canada Day. And of course, 4th of July is coming up. This will go live after 4th of July for the public, but
right.
But yeah, we hope you had a safe time and well. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
I dude, my allergies are fucking destroying me, like out of nowhere today. Well, so I'm probably gonna.
So you're gonna go eat.
What I'm probably gonna do is I'm probably gonna go inhale a Zyrtec.
Oh,
and maybe pass out so that maybe I wake up and I can breathe again.
That'd be fun. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Well, appreciate you guys and appreciate all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support of our show. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon or on free feeds. You're welcome anywhere. And of course, we appreciate every one of you for spreading the word and for listening to Defining Duke and Knockback and all the rest. So we'll see you for more Sacred Symbols next time. Of course, Sacred Symbols Plus on Patreon. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you. So Dustin's gone now?
You're both here for me.
Oh,
Colin says
Chris
offline
or Dustin,
for
are you
me.
there? Because you're not there for me.
This is fucking crazy. I see both of you. Dustin, you can't see Colin?
I cannot see Colin. He says offline.
Colin, you can't see Dustin?
No.
Oh my God.
Well, let's keep going.